Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Anyway, I'm counting on you, Professor Kenneth. Roy chuckled softly at Kenneth just before quickly leaving the room. What an annoying kid. Kenneth sighed slightly. Chapter 101, 101 Battle at the Secret Chamber in the Almeloy family mansion. The closed underground chamber was incredibly spacious, far larger than the Ryougi family's training grounds. This was the designated location where Kenneth tested his mystic codes and jewel magecraft. Thus, the place was very safe and concealed. Since it was a secret chamber, only a few people in the entire family even knew of its existence. Its excellent concealment and high safety level perfectly met Roy's criteria. Roy stood silently at the center of the chamber, closing his eyes and allowing his consciousness to re-enter the dream world. Once again, he found himself in the familiar sea of flowers and towering spires, along with a certain white-haired trickster napping nearby. You're back again, huh? Merlin, who had long since grown accustomed to Roy treating this place as his home, wasn't surprised at all. Seeing Roy approach, Merlin simply greeted him before continuing with his own business. Merlin knew that Roy wasn't here to see him this time but to meet another troublemaker. So, with tact, Merlin left the area. Roy then turned to the elegant lady seated at a tea table, enjoying a cup of floral tea. We meet again, Lady Morgan. Morgan was dressed exquisitely, no longer appearing in the hasty attire of the simulated Morgan. This time, she presented herself in her true form. Her face bore a striking resemblance to Artoria's, about 90% similar. She had long, beautiful white hair and wore a noble gown in shades of blue and black, topped with a silver-black crown. As she saw Roy appear, she walked toward him with regal steps. However, there was a playful smirk at the corner of her lips. She glanced casually at Roy with her pale blue eyes and then snapped coldly in anger. You little thief who dared to steal the power of Avalon, how dare you come here in person? Are you here to provoke me? To this, Roy shook his head. Lady Morgan, you were the one who made the first move back then. If I hadn't fought back, I wouldn't be alive right now. Humphrey, I'm not interested in wasting words with you. Clearly, Morgan had no intention of engaging in a lengthy conversation with her enemy. Her disdain for Roy was evident, her expression openly showing her disgust. Now that my sister has been revived, that village built for the ritual is no longer of any use. The experimental subjects there can do whatever they want. But out of respect for Artoria, Morgan still explained the matter of the Gravekeeper's village before decisively leaving. And as a final act of simple revenge against Roy, Morgan deliberately shattered the dream world on her way out, forcibly severing Roy's connection and ejecting him from the realm. Ah. She really is a witch who does things her own way. I was hoping to ask her about Bounded Fields. Roy, who had been expelled by Morgan, rubbed his slightly dizzy head. He couldn't help but grumble inwardly about how petty Morgan was. She was clearly the one who made the first move, and his counterattack had been purely in self-defense. At the same time, he felt a bit regretful for not being able to get her guidance. Though Merlin had helped him a lot with magecraft, that guy, for some reason, preferred solving problems with a sword rather than with magecraft. When it came to knowledge about Bounded Fields, Merlin wasn't very skilled. Even during training, when explaining certain aspects of Bounded Fields, Merlin would often be vague. For example, he had no concrete answers on how to develop a reality marble. All he could do was offer some general advice and let Roy figure it out on his own. However, magecraft knowledge in this area was vast and complex, and Roy had learned magecraft quickly and intensely, leaving his foundational knowledge still quite lacking. Even though Kenneth and Ulysses had opened up all of their family's most important magical books to Roy without hiding anything, Roy didn't have a superhuman memory system capable of quickly organizing all that knowledge. Even if the third magic allowed him to study tirelessly without sleep, understanding the content remained a significant challenge. Improving his knowledge of magecraft had its limits. Even with a well-organized heroic spirit summoning ritual, it had taken him half a year of personal research just to understand the basics. In the end, It was only thanks to Merlin's hands-on guidance that he completed the summoning ritual and successfully summoned Artoria. That was still within the realm of spirit summoning magecraft, which Merlin was proficient in, but when it came to reality marbles, Merlin was truly out of his depth. The essence of a reality marble is a powerful magecraft that manifests the inner world of the Magus. But for Merlin, an incubus who lacks emotions, constructing an inner world is unnecessary, as he doesn't even have true feelings. How could someone without emotions build a world based on their inner self? Asking Merlin how to create a reality marble was less effective than asking him to teach swordsmanship. He'd definitely teach that thoroughly, and it would be far more practical than a broken reality marble. In areas Merlin wasn't good at, all he could do was offer some suggestions and leave the rest up to Roy. But how difficult is it to develop a reality marble from scratch? For a typical Magus, the development of a reality marble should begin by understanding their origin. However, Roy had no clue about his origin, and the white mist surrounding it even obscured Merlin's clairvoyance. Thus, his plan had come to a standstill. So, when Roy saw this witch from the Age of Gods, he had hoped to have a deep conversation with her and ask about reality marbles. But looks like she won't give me a chance. Roy sighed quietly, feeling a bit helpless about Morgan's dislike for him. After all, he had just fought her in a tunnel, and it was only by using Artoria's scabbard that he managed to kill her at the brink of death. Otherwise, if he had been hit by the wrong Omniad, he wouldn't have survived or would have been seriously injured. That battle had served as a wake-up call. It made him realize the gap in his abilities. Against Morgan Le Fay wielding the wrong Omniad, relying solely on his large magical energy reserves and random combinations of spells wasn't enough to defeat her. This was his flaw, a massive one. He lacked a powerful, decisive finishing move. In that battle, Morgan would never have conceded because of Avalon. With her independent and willful nature, she wasn't the type to bond with someone through combat, like Cuchulainn or Iskander. It was inevitable that she disliked, even resented him. In fact, it was probably only out of respect for Artoria that she was willing to meet with him and lift the curse on the Gravekeeper's village. So, it all came down to his own efforts. Forget it. No point in dwelling on it now. I should try out the new treasure I just got. With that thought, Roy began channeling magical energy to activate the Logos React simulation device he had brought back from the Gravekeeper's village. Zepia had said that he could use this mystic code for a while, but he would come and collect it later. Though he didn't know when that would be, Roy was still very interested in it, especially since it was one of the 7 great artifacts of the Atlas Institute. After all, he had witnessed its power firsthand in the Gravekeeper's village. First, he infused it with enough magical energy, then linked it to his memories. Next, he simulated a battlefield. As Logos React began to operate, the surroundings quickly transformed into the streets of Fuiuki City, though the streets were empty, without a single figure in sight. Roy stood beneath the Hyatt Hotel building. Next, the opponents. Since it was based on his memories, he would start by simulating Lancelot and Fion. In the simulated barrier, Roy engaged in combat with the 2 knights, boosting his magical energy. The simulated Lancelot and Fion were completely identical in strength and skills to the real ones he had fought. However, since he had never seen them fight with their full strength, the simulation could only replicate the abilities he had witnessed, recreating the power he was familiar with. Well then, let's begin. As soon as his words fell, the replicated golden-haired knight and the black knight immediately sprang into action, rushing toward Roy from 2 different directions with incredible speed. Boom. About an hour into the battle, the simulated streets of Fuiuki City had been reduced to a chaotic ruin by their reckless fighting. Swoosh. With the sound of crystal shattering, Roy pierced through Fion's Saint Grath while enduring the barrage from Fion's noble phantasm, and then quickly took down Lancelot as well. He had won. But it was by no means easy. Even though the 2 knights were merely simulations, their strength was very close to what he knew of them. Their unique skills and combat styles were strikingly similar. First, Fion swung his magical spear, controlling water to create significant trouble for him. In close combat, Fion's martial skills were extremely formidable, and his spear attacks were relentless, aiming precisely at Roy's weak spots, managing to leave several cuts on him. What was worse, Lancelot pulled out 2 submachine guns from who knows where. Strengthened by his Knight of Honor, he unleashed a barrage of gunfire that put Roy under intense pressure. Submachine guns, grenades, Gatling guns. An array of modern firearms, all enhanced to noble phantasm level, were unleashed upon him without mercy. Roy had no choice but to run and hide within the city, dodging and maneuvering while looking for opportunities to take them down one by one. However, things got even worse when Fion suddenly activated his noble phantasm. The Makanluan, releasing the power of the war god Nuada who ruled over the waters, surged towards him in a powerful torrent. It almost cost Roy dearly and made him realize just how terrifying the power of this Celtic legend was. Luckily, at that moment, Lancelot launched a carpet-bombing assault that interrupted Phaon's noble phantasm halfway, preventing it from reaching its full destructive potential. Thus, Roy, enduring the remaining surge of magical energy, forcibly shattered the Saint Graph of the simulated Phaon. Facing Lancelot, whose abilities he knew well, was a bit easier. Without a commander, a berserker like Lancelot posed less of a threat than Phaon. Besides, since Roy had once fused with Lancelot's Saint Graph, he was well acquainted with his abilities. Before long, Lancelot too was defeated. But despite his victory, Roy was left battered and felt lucky to have won. If these two knights had worked together instead of fighting independently with the sole goal of defeating him, the battle would have been much tougher. In fact, he might have been defeated. After fighting for so long, Roy couldn't help but marvel at the wonders of this mystic code. It could simulate environments and enemies with such realism that, as long as he had enough magical energy, it could serve as an excellent training tool. However, it was also dangerous. If one wasn't careful, they could easily die in here. But there was no doubt that it greatly improved the user's combat abilities. Next, Roy began simulating more opponents based on his memories. Artoria without her scabbard, Hundred-Face Hassan, Iskander without his reality marble, and the Count. He excluded Gilgamesh, who was simply too powerful. In the simulated world, one battle after another unfolded. The more he fought, the more Roy came to realize the strength of these servants and his own weaknesses. Iskander's gorgeous wheel's superior mobility gave him endless trouble. Artoria's swordsmanship, combined with her instinct skill, allowed her to dominate close combat. Meanwhile, the Count's speed and black flames made Roy feel like he understood how Morgan felt when she faced him. In short, aside from the somewhat disappointing Hundred-Face Hassan, each servant had their own unique talents and special moves. Their various noble phantasms and combat skills emerged one after another, and simply watching them in action wouldn't reveal their true power. After much effort, and through several hard-fought battles, Roy finally managed to defeat each of the servants one by one. The cost was significant. His body was pummeled for half an hour by Iskander's gorgeous wheel, he narrowly avoided being sliced to pieces by Artoria's Excalibur, and he engaged in a fierce battle of flames and speed against the Count. Through these intense exchanges with powerful opponents, Roy made considerable progress in his combat abilities and became better equipped to handle different crises. Unfortunately, since he hadn't witnessed Iskander's ultimate noble phantasm, Ionia Hetairo, he couldn't experience the grandeur of that moment or draw inspiration for developing his own reality marble. After greeting these old acquaintances, it was time for something new. Closing his eyes, Roy began feeding data of two more individuals into the Logos React system. Gilgamesh, Morgan Le Fay. Aside from the false angel created by Magus, these two were the strongest opponents he had faced so far. He started with Morgan. As a witch from the Age of Gods, her mastery of magecraft was unparalleled. Perhaps in battling her, he could find some inspiration for developing his reality marble. As Roy's thoughts took shape, the scene before him quickly shifted. In an instant, he found himself inside a grand palace. Morgan sat on the throne, her eyes slowly opening as she noticed his presence. The moment she saw Roy, her turquoise eyes flashed with a strange light, like a venomous snake locking onto its prey. Instinctively, Roy sensed a powerful danger emanating from the simulated Morgan. This deadly threat was completely different from the simulated servants he had faced before. It felt as though she truly had her sights set on him. It was as if he were facing the real Morgan Le Fay again. He began to wonder, was this simulation really just a copy? Sensing Roy's hesitation, the simulated Morgan smiled faintly. She raised her hand, and in an instant, magical energy began manifesting on the ground. Swish! With a swift, two massive stone arms suddenly erupted from the palace floor, swinging towards Roy. What? Caught off guard by the simulated Morgan's sudden attack, Roy couldn't dodge in time. The powerful punch struck him like a spinning top, sending him crashing into the wall. Hey, you audacious fool, I can't believe you dared to simulate me as your training dummy. Don't you know? I left fragments of my soul in Logos React long ago. Morgan Le Fay said with a cold sneer as she stood up. As long as a suitable body appears, I can possess it and manifest here. So that's how it is. It really is Morgan herself. Crawling out of the wall, Roy quickly used magecraft to heal his injuries, a wry smile on his face. No wonder I felt such overwhelming pressure, and that sudden sneak attack. It's exactly your style. You brought this on yourself. Morgan scoffed. Daring to use me as a whetstone for your training. A disrespectful wretch like you wouldn't be punished enough even if you were killed 100 times. If it were in the past, I would have turned you into ingredients for my magic potions by now. As she spoke, Morgan's hand never stopped casting spells. More stone arms erupted from the ground, reaching out to grab Roy. Not wasting any time, Roy dodged swiftly. Morgan then raised her fingertip, drawing a blue circle of light in the air, gathering compressed magical energy, and fired it at him. Roy didn't hesitate. With a sharp swing of his arm, he unleashed his true power. Dark, scorching flames rose, causing the temperature in the throne hall to skyrocket instantly. Those flames again. The ones that can burn through magical energy? The deep blue magical blasts collided with the black flames, filling the battlefield with dazzling new flashes of light as the fight erupted once more. I've heard from that fool Merlin that you're struggling with developing your reality marble. Well then. Let me help you gain a deeper understanding of it. Of course, you'll learn it through your body. Morgan added, her voice calm but barely hiding her excitement. It seemed that she was more than happy to deal with Roy in such an interesting manner. With a flick of her fingers, she formed hand seals and chanted an incantation. A completely different barrier immediately covered the simulated scene created by Logo's React. In the next moment, both of them were transported from the palace to a dark, twisted forest. And then, more magical blasts, fiercer and more terrifying than before, began raining down on Roy. The eerie forest began to writhe, the ground underfoot softening and collapsing. The trees around him, as if alive, lashed out at him with their branches like whips, striking at his body. Seeing this, Roy had no choice but to desperately evade. Meanwhile, outside in the bustling streets, Artoria and her companions continued to enjoy their carefree stroll. But in the dark, secret chamber of the Elmeloy household, Roy and Morgan had once again engaged in an intense battle. Strange and unpredictable magecraft continued to flow from the hands of the witch from the Age of Gods. Yes, fight. Keep fighting. Far away in Avalon, Merlin was munching on popcorn, cheering loudly as he watched the rare spectacle unfold. Merlin loved nothing more than a good fight. Especially if it involved women fighting. Chapter 102, 102 Meet again. After 2 months, Roy met Merlin again. In the dream world, Merlin saw him approaching and greeted him with a smile. What's going on? Seeing you always feel terrible. Merlin shook his head. You really have no manners, showing me such an expression the moment we meet. Nothing, just fought so hard my head's not clear. Is it over? Well, more or less. After fighting for so long, I should have made some progress. Hearing this, Merlin couldn't help but smile wryly. The fact that the two of you could fight in a simulated barrier for 2 months is kind of strange. I didn't expect Morgan to be so patient, fighting with you for that long. Who knows? Maybe she just wanted to blow off some steam. After all, losing, seeking, gaining again only to lose once more, and finally realizing that all her efforts were in vain. It's impossible for her not to feel frustrated or guilty. Roy leaned back in his chair. Perhaps I really did want to sharpen myself through her. But wasn't she using me as a tool to vent her anger as well? So, who won in the end? You didn't watch till the end? Ha ha ha, at first, it was indeed quite interesting, but after a month, it got boring. I have other things to do, after all. Merlin scratched his head, laughing awkwardly. His so-called other things meant logging into his magical girl account to surf the internet. 32 wins, 40 losses, 6 draws. How did you lose so many times? Hearing this, Roy's expression changed, and he raised his hand to cover his face. That woman got so angry in the middle of the fight that she pulled out her wrong ominiad. I had already returned Avalon to Artoria, so I had no way to counter it. If it weren't for his sheer luck and his familiarity with the spear's power, Morgan might have impaled him. So that's what happened. That must have been tough. Merlin patted his shoulder comfortingly. But, honestly, I'm quite satisfied. Roy shook his head, a smile forming on his face. It's not just about suddenly gaining power or a flawless body. It's about the magical knowledge I possess, the strategies I've learned, and how I've integrated them into my fighting style. I've used everything. And now, I feel like I've been reborn. The confusion about my future path and the arrogance I felt after gaining power are completely gone. I can clearly see the road I need to walk. Whether it's facing the wrong ominiad or stronger enemies, I won't be lost anymore. That's really something worth congratulating. Merlin clapped his hands and offered his congratulations when he saw Roy smiling. Thank you, Merlin. Roy stood up and stretched towards the sun above Avalon. It's about time. I should go back and find Artoria and the others. I haven't seen them in 2 months, they must be going crazy with worry. Ha ha, yes, Artoria has been looking for you non-stop recently. Also, make sure to thank Morgan for me. She really helped me out this time. Although I don't know what kind of gift a witch would want, I'll compile a photo album of Artoria's life in the modern world and send it to her as a small token of gratitude. Ha ha ha. A photo album of Artoria? Morgan will definitely be happy when she gets it. After all, Artoria is the most important person to her. Merlin nodded. Don't worry, I'll pass along your message. Thanks, Merlin. I'll come see you again in a while. Avalon will always welcome you, my dear friend. In the outside world, London. Grey was overjoyed. To her, this was a very happy, perhaps the most perfect, time in her life. It had been a long time since she felt such genuine happiness. It seemed like ever since her appearance changed, her life had been turned upside down. From that day on, a certain ordinary girl had lost her smile. Ah. Which one? Never mind. Miss Rains. Don't refuse, Grey. These clothes really suit you. Rains pulled Grey by the hand, weaving through a large mall in London, helping her pick out one Gothic-style outfit after another, along with gifts. There was no hint of condescension just because Grey was a country girl. Rains, like a girl dressing up a doll, was enthusiastically choosing beautiful outfits for her. Behind them, Artoria was carrying the clothes the two girls had bought, smiling as she watched Grey, with a hint of warmth and relief in her gaze. Although they hadn't known each other for long, 2 months together made Artoria feel like she saw her younger self in Grey. She had grown very fond of this gentle, pure, yet slightly timid girl, already seeing her as a little sister whom she wanted to protect and heal from her emotional wounds. Feeling this warmth, Grey indeed found herself being drawn into it, completely immersed in the kindness shown to her. After all, she was still young. With a child's innocence, she emerged from her long-standing repression into a world of care and tenderness, causing her eyes to gradually well up with tears. The initial timidity and caution she felt were slowly lifted, thanks to the nurturing care of Artoria and Rains. She started to let Rains drag her through the streets of London, smiling as they ran and played. They first went to a shopping mall to buy a variety of outfits and everyday necessities for Grey, then visited many of London's landmark buildings, toured the British Museum, and finally, together with Artoria, enjoyed a fine meal at a high-end restaurant. During their outings, due to the resemblance between Grey and Artoria, they were often mistaken for sisters by passers-by. After all, they both appeared too young to be mistaken for mother and daughter. In short, with everyone's sincere treatment, Grey opened her heart and lowered her guard. By the time the sun was setting, the girls returned home, carrying bags full of their day's purchases. It marked the end of a happy yet short day. As they opened the doors of the Elmelloy estate, accompanied by laughter and joy, the group returned home. Roy, who had been reading magical books in the underground library, smiled faintly, sensing their return. During his absence, it seemed they had been having a great time, and Grey had fully adapted to life in the big city. Indeed, entrusting her to Rains for guidance had been the right choice. Girls always have the most in common with each other. Thinking this, Roy slowly closed the book in his hands and stepped out of the room. When Rains and Artoria saw Roy, who had been missing for so long, they were both pleasantly surprised. Grey's face also lit up with a joyful smile. Though Roy had left a note for Artoria before disappearing, she still couldn't help but worry. A month after his disappearance, Artoria couldn't hold back any longer and had Rains lead her to Kenneth's magical workshop to ask about Roy's whereabouts. That afternoon, Kenneth, realizing someone had barged into his workshop, was furious. But when he saw that it was the imposing King Arthur, his anger quickly subsided. Comparing their strengths, Kenneth realized that without his Lancer, there was no way he could take her on. Not a chance. So, he had no choice but to serve tea to Artoria and properly host her. After a brief conversation, when Kenneth learned that Artoria was searching for Roy, he didn't hide anything and told her that Roy had been in seclusion underground. This finally put Artoria's mind at ease. She and Grey continued their outings with Rains in London. Now that Roy had returned, Grey was much more talkative tonight. She excitedly told Roy about all the fun things that had happened in the past few days, the beautiful places Rains had taken her to, the strange and wonderful things she had seen, and the joys she had experienced. From her innocent and lively words, Roy also learned that Artoria had managed to get them both blacklisted from many all-you-can-eat restaurants across London. This made Artoria blush slightly. With righteous indignation, she said, "Hunger is a serious enemy. They clearly said it was unlimited dining. That doesn't justify eating half the restaurant out of food." Rains couldn't help but sweat a little. In any case, everything in London was entirely new and exciting for this country girl. "Huh, I see." In the living room, Roy smiled and nodded as he listened to Grey's vivid recounting. "I'm glad to see that you've been enjoying your time in London. I was worried you might not adapt to life in the big city, but it seems I was overly concerned. Rains, make sure to take good care of Grey, treat her like your sister." "Of course, Roy." Rains responded quickly, hugging Grey's neck with a smile. "Don't worry, I'll take great care of Grey. We're sisters after all, haha, you can count on me." "Then, I'll leave Grey in your care, Rains." Roy nodded, then turned to Gray. Gray, you've left behind the cemetery that once confined you. Here, no one will treat you differently. No one here will worship you, nor will anyone dislike you because of your appearance. You can be confident and do whatever you want to do. What I want to do? Gray murmured, her eyes staring blankly at Roy before lowering her head in disappointment. I'm sorry, but I still don't know what I want to do, or what I should be doing. I just left the village, and I'm still feeling a bit lost. Feeling lost, huh? That's perfectly normal. When someone leaves the environment they've lived in for over a decade and steps into an unfamiliar place, it's natural to feel confused. It's a normal reaction. As he spoke, Roy gently patted Gray's head. But trust that this confusion won't last long. In the days ahead, you'll surely find something you really want to do, something that gives new meaning to your life. Okay. If you don't know what you want to do yet, why not go study at the clock tower? I have a friend there who could teach you. Become a magical girl. Suddenly, a completely out-of-place voice interrupted the conversation. Eh? Gray looked out the window, and Roy also shifted his gaze to the window. He saw an old gentleman, Zelrech, who had been absent for a long time, tear open a dimensional rift by the window and sneakily poke his head through. Ha 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 ha, brat, so you were here all along. You sure made this old man search for you. Ah. It's the magician of the second magic, Lord Zelrech. Rains was startled by the sudden appearance of the old man in the room. Unlike Artoria, as a student from the Lord faction, Rains was well aware of who Zelrech was. This elderly man had many titles: the legendary magician of the second magic, the wizard marshal, the undisputed top figure of the Mages Association, and a pillar of the clock tower. He was a figure of legend, rarely seen, and now standing before her, it left Rains in shock. Who was this? Artoria, sensing the intruder, wasn't about to show any kindness. Her knightly instincts immediately detected a huge sense of danger coming from Zelrech. Without hesitation, she drew her sword, Excalibur, and leaped towards Zelrech, aiming a strike directly at him. Hey, calm down, King Arthur. I'm not your enemy. I'm here to find that brat over there. Clang. A sharp metallic sound echoed as Zelrech casually raised his cane and effortlessly blocked Artoria's attack, then calmly stepped back. You even swung the Excalibur at me, and without holding back, too. Zelrech grumbled, blowing at his beard in dissatisfaction. Did Merlin raise you to be like this? I don't show manners to uninvited guests. Artoria snorted coldly, ready to continue her attack, but Roy quickly spoke up to stop her. Stand down, Artoria. He's not our enemy. Besides, even if we fought, we wouldn't stand a chance against him. See? Even your master said I'm not an enemy, King Arthur. I understand. Upon hearing Roy's confirmation, Artoria sheathed her sword, but her gaze never left Zelrech. The intense sense of danger that had filled the room from the moment Zelrech appeared still lingered, a primal warning like that of prey sensing a predator. The stronger the warrior, the sharper their instincts, and as a king among knights, Artoria's were exceptional. Zelrech, as a dead apostle ancestor, was a natural predator of humanity. Even though Zelrech had suppressed this side of him, Artoria's sharp instincts picked up on it. A threat even greater than Vortigern. She couldn't relax around him. Zelrech, however, didn't seem to mind. He casually sat down opposite Roy. And so, these two magicians began their second conversation within the walls of Elmela Mansion. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect you, brat, to stir up so much trouble in the clock tower in such a short time. You even managed to summon King Arthur. Quite impressive. Looks like you've got a solid grasp of the heroic spirit summoning technique left by the three founding families. Not only that, you've acquired some special mystic eyes, and your mastery of the third magic has improved as well. But what surprises me most is how quickly you've reached that level of understanding. It's quite something. Zelrech leaned back on the sofa, studying Roy carefully, clicking his tongue in amazement. At the rate you're growing, you might even surpass Ozaki girl in a few decades. Soon, you might even catch up to me. You foreigner really are something else. It's no wonder you've thrown the clock tower's power structure into disarray and reshuffled everything to consolidate your own influence. I'm finding it harder and harder to see through you, brat. You overestimate me. I can only barely use the power of the third magic right now. To fully comprehend it and extend it like you have will take much more time. As for what you're referring to, I've only just touched the threshold. It's far from complete. Humphrey, are you trying to be modest? Zelrech blew at his beard again, irritated. Don't get cocky, brat. Do you know how long it took me to develop it? If you surpass me that easily, I wouldn't even have a place in the world anymore. Anyway, Zelrech, you didn't come here just to chat, did you? What do you need from me? Roy got straight to the point. You're right, I do have something to ask of you. But before that, there's something important I need to say. Zelrach's tone became serious, and seeing this, Roy's expression grew more solemn as well. If Zelrach was being this serious, it meant something significant was about to happen. The atmosphere in the room turned tense. Please, go ahead, Roy said after a moment. Very well. Zelrach opened a dimensional rift, stepped through, and appeared behind Rains and Gray, patting them on the shoulders. What lovely young ladies. Both of you have the perfect age and appearance. Would you be interested in signing a contract with me to become magical girls? My magical girl transformation device is now updated to version 5.0, with even better effects and outfits. You won't be able to refuse. Eh? What? Both girls were caught completely off guard by Zelrach's sudden and bizarre proposition. Rains was nervous about being so close to the magician of the second magic, while Gray had no idea what being a magical girl even meant. The previously serious atmosphere dissipated as Zelrach lightened the mood with his antics. Roy now understood why Merlin got along so well with Zelrach. They were cut from the same cloth. Although King Arthur is a beautiful girl too, she's unfortunately a bit too old to become a magical girl. She's past the ideal age. Zelrach even sighed as he said this. Artoria frowned, tempted to strike the old man for his audacity. It was the first time she had been called too old, and this brazen remark stung. Didn't he know such comments were rude to women? Stop messing around, Zelrach. Enough with the jokes. Roy glanced at the flustered girls before turning his attention back to Zelrach, asking, what did you really come here for? Humphrey, asking such boring questions in front of two such lovely girls. You're too young, brat. You don't appreciate the beauty of magical girls. Zelrach grumbled as he sat back on the sofa, displeased. But fine. As your senior from this path, I was inviting you to explore the wonders of magical girls with me. Don't be so dull. I'll pass. I'd rather remain dull than become an old man obsessed with magical girls like you. Roy took a sip of his coffee and calmly declined. Artoria, take Gray and Nice back to the room. Don't pay any attention to this old man, I'll handle things here. Okay, you be careful too. Before leaving, Artoria warned, wary of this old man who had easily repelled her. I understand. Nodding, the two watched as the three left the living room. Roy raised his hand and opened a layer of bounded field. Seeing this, Zelrach couldn't help but laugh. You're really surprisingly cautious. With two magicians here, are you worried that someone would dare to spy on us? Better safe than sorry. Although humans can't see us, some non-human clairvoyants can, can't they? That's true. Although I don't really mind. Roy continued, let's stop the small talk. What happened that made you come here in person? Alright, since you're in such a hurry, I'll get straight to the point. Zelrach withdrew his frivolous attitude, nodded, and opened a dimensional rift with a wave of his hand. He then pulled out a piece of pale yellow parchment and tossed it to Roy. What is this? Roy caught the strange parchment and opened it. The contents made him narrow his eyes. This is the first commission I'm assigning you. The specific details are on this special parchment. I have to leave this world for a while due to some matters, so I'm leaving this task to you. Is that alright? The Crimson Moon is about to be revived? Not necessarily. I just observed a certain possibility. But even so, we cannot be careless. If that guy revives, it could be quite troublesome, and I can't guarantee that I can defeat her again in the current state. Saying this, Zelrach let out a slight sigh. Originally, I had planned to handle this matter myself for the utmost certainty. However, I have some important things that I can't get away from right now. The idiots in the clock tower are bound to cause trouble, and Ozaki girl lacks your reliability in both temperament and strength. So I can only entrust this to you, a fellow magician. Gazing at the parchment in his hand, Roy fell silent, not immediately agreeing or refusing. He glanced at Zelrach and then asked, if we were to confront her directly, how does my strength compare to that of the Crimson Moon? Ah. Huh. You mean you and Crimson Moon? Upon hearing this, Zelrach raised an eyebrow, scrutinizing him for a moment before bursting into laughter. Ha 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 ha, that question is really strange. Ha 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 ha. I haven't heard such an interesting question in a long time. I admit you have tremendous potential. Coupled with the endless lifespan granted by the third magic, you could indeed reach a terrifying realm given enough time. It's not impossible for you to become Obeyonder in the future. However, your only shortcoming right now is that you are too young. Your time as a magician has been too short, and much of your power only reaches a level of usability and understanding. You're far from fully mastering it and extending beyond. You haven't reached your peak yet. To be frank, your chances of challenging the Crimson Moon right now are less than 10%. Indeed, challenging the Crimson Moon in your current state is still too much of a stretch. There's still a significant gap between your strength and the world's top tier. He had already felt his inadequacies and disparities when facing Morgan, who wielded the wrong Omniad. After listening, Roy wasn't particularly disheartened. After a moment of contemplation, his gaze subtly brightened. At least there was some hope. I'll take on this commission. I'll keep a close eye on Millennium Castle, where Black Princess and White Princess are, for you. As for the dead Apostle Anchster, Roa, if I encounter him, I'll eliminate him as well. Is that acceptable? Oh? You've bounced back from your disappointment so quickly? That's quite reliable. Roa's reincarnation ability is troublesome, but with your mastery of the third magic and control over black flames, you are his absolute nemesis. Perhaps this time you can truly extinguish his vitality. Zelrach rubbed his chin with interest and looked at Roy. Since you're already aware, I won't repeat the unnecessary details. In any case, I'll leave this matter to you. Now, I have more important things to attend to, so I won't linger. Having said that, Zelrach stood up, ready to leave. Before departing, he placed a blank sheet of paper on the table. This blank sheet is a mystic code that allows you to communicate with me across parallel worlds. If you encounter any confusion or problems you can't solve, just write your questions on this paper. I'll respond once I see it. Oh, there's one more thing. Someone from the Atlas Institute entrusted me to retrieve the mystic codes stored here. As a reward, they will help me upgrade the magical girl transformation system once the task is completed. Just as Zelrach was about to leave, he suddenly remembered the request from Zepaya. So, kid, where did you put the mystic codes you brought back from the Gravekeeper village? I put them in the basement of the Almela mansion. You can go get them yourself. Got it. I still have important matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving now. A dimensional rift appeared behind Zelrach as his tall figure slowly disappeared within. He then mysteriously added, by the way, after you resolve this matter, I'll give you an unexpected reward, so just look forward to it. Ha 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 ha. Watching Zelrach leave, Roy shook his head. As long as the gift isn't some strange upgraded magical girl transformation device, I'll be fine. Chapter 103, 103 Millennium Castle. The crimson moon hung in the sky. The deep and ancient castle exuded a chilling and eerie atmosphere. The blood-red sea of flowers, illuminated by the moonlight, carried not only the scent of flowers but also a smell of blood. The flower sea extended beneath his feet, while the blood moon hanging above the castle signified foreboding. However, the colors of this world were limited to this shade of red. In the lunar realm, the cold far outweighed the blossoms. If one were to look further, the view would reveal an endless expanse of white snowfields, stretching far and wide into the horizon, an unending pale vista. So this is Millennium Castle. Roy recognized this place. This was the base established on Earth by the true ancestor king, Brunesteed of the Crimson Moon, who had traveled from the moon long ago. This area did not exist on the surface. Instead, it was nestled between the reverse side of the world and the surface world. This area was not a reality marble, it resembled an independently developed zone. A planar world constructed by the King of the Moon. She regarded this as her palace and the stronghold of the true ancestors. But why had he suddenly arrived here? Though puzzled, since he was in this world, he had no way to return and could only continue forward. Roy traversed the glowing white flower sea and pushed open the castle's large doors before stepping inside. The ancient Gothic castle, dark as its exterior suggested, embodied a sense of darkness and mystery, offering a considerable degree of safety for the dead apostles. Their origins were rooted in this castle. Dead apostles, blood-sucking bats, and some strange familiars that couldn't be named. Everything in this castle truly resembled the vampire legends from Western Europe, containing all the necessary elements. Or rather, the vampire legends from Western Europe were born from the existence of the dead apostles. What an exquisite construction, with an air reminiscent of a demon castle. Roy couldn't help but shake his head as he continued deeper into Millennium Castle. Along the way, some low-level dead apostles attempted to ambush him but were impaled against the walls by the silver swords he shot out, turning to ash amidst their pain screams. His advance seemed to disturb the castle's tranquility, and a pair of eyes opened in the darkness. Who are you? A voice seemed to emerge from the depths of the castle. It sounded somewhat weak. Is it the princess? The first figure that came to Roy's mind, appearing in Millennium Castle, was Princess Arcuaid Brunesteed. Why are you here? Indeed, why was he here? He too was searching for an answer. After finishing his conversation with Zelrach, he returned to his study, preparing for his upcoming journey to Japan. However, feeling a sense of fatigue, he tried to rest his eyes for a moment. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in the flower sea outside Millennium Castle. How had he gotten here? Did Zelrach use the second magic to send him here? He was unclear about the exact reason, but since he was here, he would find out the truth. First, he would go meet the owner of that voice. The White Princess was also one of his objectives. Thus, he replied, "Roy, a lost intruder." "Roy? Is it Roy? I remember." That voice came in intermittent waves. Roy began exploring the interior of Millennium Castle. It could be said that every road within Millennium Castle was deeply complex and filled with dangerous traps and ambushes from the dead apostles. However, these dead apostles had lost their sanity, appearing as mindless corpses, likely starved into delirium. Were they the remnants left in Millennium Castle by the true ancestors? He recalled that before Arcuaid was schemed against by Roa and Millennium Castle was bloodied, this city had been an absolutely safe haven for the true ancestors. A holy ground that no Magus could invade or destroy, and the origin of their existence. As long as they stayed hidden here, they could rest easy. However, Roa had lured Arcuaid into a rampage, killing all the true ancestors within Millennium Castle, leading Arcuaid to hold a grudge and initiate an endless hunt. These dead apostles, who had lost their intellect due to their master's death and were left to suffer from insatiable hunger, still clung to life within Millennium Castle. Nevertheless, this established order was about to be shattered today. Not only had an outsider entered Millennium Castle, but he had also easily dealt with the attacking dead apostles. With a subtle movement of his fingers, silver swords, highly effective against vampires, flashed like meteors, ruthlessly reaping the lurking dead apostles in Millennium Castle. The mindless monsters were now being put out of their misery. As he advanced, any dead apostles daring to attack or ambush him were pinned against the walls, turning to ashes under the influence of the silver imbued with black flames. Was there still no end in sight? After walking for so long, he still hadn't reached the depths of Millennium Castle, which surprised Roy. At that moment, the female voice resonated from the darkness once again. "Leave quickly, Roy. Don't come any closer." "Leave?" Roy pondered. He hadn't even figured out how he got here, so how could he possibly know how to leave? "Who are you?" Roy was neither frightened nor inclined to leave. Instead, he inquired about the owner of the voice. Although he already had a guess. "Me. My name is Hash." The name was impossible to hear clearly, as if it had been deliberately obscured. In just an instant, Roy felt a heat in his eyes and a discomfort in his brain, causing his magical energy to start operating automatically. In the next moment, he saw the scenery in front of him changing dramatically as if the stars were shifting. He glimpsed a figure deep within Millennium Castle, bound by chains. Arcuaid Brunistute. He called her name, and at that moment, the slender figure slowly lifted her head. Through the endless haze, their gazes locked. Crack. But accompanied by a piercing sound, his vision suddenly became clear, and everything transformed into fleeting feathers that rapidly vanished before his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he was back in the familiar study, the materials he had organized last night quietly laid out on the desk. Outside, Gray was knocking on the door, calling for him to come eat breakfast. A dream? Roy rubbed his hands together, reflecting on his journey to Millennium Castle last night. This dream felt so real that he hadn't even realized he was dreaming. The ancient castle in the dream was undoubtedly Millennium Castle, the castle where the true ancestors resided, and also the place used to imprison Arcuaid Brunistute. The girl bound by chains was none other than the White Princess, Arcuaid Brunistute. Why did he dream of Millennium Castle, and why did he meet Arcuaid? Especially on the same night, Zelrach had just visited him. If he were to say it was merely a coincidence with no connection, he wouldn't believe it. So now the only question was, who was manipulating him? Was it Zelrach who guided him to peek into Millennium Castle, or was it someone else? Merlin? For some reason, whenever he thought of dreams, he unconsciously recalled the Magus of flowers closely related to dreams. He muttered softly, and as if responding to him, beneath the letter left by Zelrach was a pale pink flower. It seemed there was no need for doubt, it was quite evident. That guy had openly laid the events before him. Seeing the familiar petals was equivalent to acknowledging that it was he who had directed Roy's consciousness to Millennium Castle, allowing him to wander through the city in a dream and meet the White Princess. Had Zelrach contacted him in advance? What a meddlesome guy. But it also served as a reminder for him. White Princess Arcuaid Brunistute. Moon Princess. True ancestor, and the mystic eyes of death perception. And snakes. It seemed this experience would be quite interesting. As Roy contemplated this, bang. The door to the study was forcibly kicked open. "Roy. Are you in there?" Rains rushed into the study with Gray, flustered. "What's going on?" Roy glanced at the two, puzzled. It's nothing. It's just that Gray said when she went to your room to find you and saw you weren't there, she knocked on the study door for a long time without any response. So we were a bit worried about you, and that's why." Rains explained cautiously about her impolite behavior of kicking the door. "Knocking. So Roy did recall hearing something like knocking as his consciousness detached from Millennium Castle. It was just that he had been focused on thoughts about Millennium Castle and Arcuaid at the time, so he had overlooked it. Don't worry, I'm fine, I just overslept a bit. Is that so? Rains nodded and let out a small sigh of relief. But this is really rare. You, who usually don't rest much, actually stayed in bed. It's already 1 in the afternoon. Gray said, yes, Sir Roy. King Arthur asked me to come get you for lunch. 1 in the afternoon? Had it gotten so late? Roy rubbed his head and nodded, replying, I see, thank you for coming to get me. Please tell Artoria that I'll be there shortly. Oh, and by the way, Rain should have class this afternoon. I'll take you to complete your enrollment procedures later, Gray. Ah, okay. Okay, Sir Roy. Hearing his words, Gray was a bit surprised and asked, may I ask what you mean by going to school? It means going to the clock tower for further study, which is where Rain studies. Your assigned teacher's name is Waver Velvet. Although he may not seem reliable, he's someone I can trust. Eh? You mean you're letting that silly disciple to teach Gray? Yeah, it's quite suitable to let Waver take care of Gray. He is now recognized as a professional lecturer by the clock tower faculty, so there shouldn't be any problems. Plus, with my connections, he'll be able to look out for Gray a bit more. Eh, so that guy is actually pretty capable? Young Magecraft lecturers are quite rare, and he really doesn't seem like much on the surface. Yeah, Waver has never been a mediocre person, he possesses exceptional talents, but not in the Magecraft. Those who mock him are simply short-sighted. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been taken as an apprentice by Professor Kenneth. Of course, you'll need to discover more details for yourself. If you spend more time with him, you'll see his talents. In any case, Gray, be prepared. This afternoon, you'll get to meet your future mentor. Roy patted Gray on the shoulder and smiled, saying, you need to work hard in your studies from now on. Aim to become an outstanding Magus, Gray. Okay. Okay. The courtyard of the clock tower. Waver and Roy were walking side by side, with Gray following them to become his apprentice. In any case, I'm entrusting Gray to you from now on, Waver. Although I'm not sure if I'm qualified to take on a disciple since it's your request, I will certainly do my best to teach this child. Understanding Roy's intention, Waver glanced at the shy girl who had her head down and smiled slightly. He then assured him, after training with Professor Kenneth for so long, I've made significant progress. Teaching a Magecraft apprentice shouldn't be a problem, so you can rest assured. That's really reassuring. Roy nodded and continued, if you encounter any issues that need assistance, you can call me, or go to the Department of Mineralogy to find Professor Kenneth, or to the Department of Astromancy and Spiritual Evocation, they will help you. Okay, wait. Huh? Astromancy and Spiritual Evocation? How did you get involved with those two disciplines? This is simply ridiculous. Does Professor Kenneth know about this? No, if he knew you were messing around like this, he would have definitely blown up by now. Hearing Roy's words, Waver was taken aback and quickly grabbed his shoulder, asking urgently, Roy, you're not secretly accepting invitations from other factions behind Professor Kenneth's back, are you? Based on his understanding of Kenneth, if he knew his disciple was getting involved with subjects outside the Department of Mineralogy, he would surely have a fit and then severely punish Roy. Moreover, Roy, having a master while privately accepting invitations from other schools, could definitely be considered betrayal. Such betrayal is unforgivable in any school. Now he could only hope that Roy had not gotten too deeply involved with other factions. While Kenneth was unaware, there was still time to make amends, to quickly distance himself from other subjects, and finally seek protection from Kenneth. A teacher with a sharp tongue but a kind heart would surely not stand by and ignore this. In any case, you need to hurry and... Wow. That hurts. Stop overthinking it. Roy's hand chop interrupted Waver's rambling, and he sighed, things aren't as simple as you think. However, Professor Kenneth knows about all of this. If you really want to know the reasons behind it, just ask him directly. Ah. Waver weakly held his head. Roy's action reminded him of the time he spent with the King of Conquerors. In any case, I'm entrusting Gray to you. I have some matters to handle back in Japan. But you don't need to feel pressured, just help Gray with her studies and guidance. Try to treat her as your student or assistant, and in some cases, she might give you unexpected surprises. Surprises? This girl. Upon hearing this, Waver was taken aback and then carefully observed Gray, whose face was buried beneath her cloak. He then greeted the timid girl, hello, Gray. I am your teacher, Waver Velvet. I hope we can get along in the days to come. Wow. Waver's gaze collided with Gray's, and he was shocked by what he saw. Saber. That familiar face was unforgettable, even if turned to ashes. Even after so long, Waver remembered his experiences in the Holy Grail War. In that war, Arthur Saber had undoubtedly left a deep impression on him. And now, this girl named Grey resembled Saber by over 90%, which could not be a coincidence. He urgently cast a questioning glance at Roy. What on earth is going on with this girl? Don't be so nervous, Waver. She's not King Arthur. Seeing Waver startled, Roy sighed. Explaining this is complicated. I have more important matters to attend to right now, let the person involved explain it to you. He addressed the air beside him. I'm counting on you, Artoria. Sure, no problem, Master. Artoria's figure suddenly appeared next to Waver. Wow. She really showed up. It's Saber. It's been a while, Master of Rider. It is indeed me, King Arthur Artoria, summoned once more into this world. Artoria greeted the stunned Waver. It's nice to see you again. Master has already informed me about you. It seems you've grown a lot since the Holy Grail War ended. I believe your king would be proud of you. The momentary shock turned into calm. Whenever it came to matters related to the Conqueror King, he treated them seriously. Because I promised that king, even if I am all alone, I will strive to become a true subject worthy of following him. However, what exactly was going on? Why had King Arthur been summoned back into this world? According to reports, the Greater Grail had already been dismantled. The shock lasted only a short time. Just a few seconds after seeing Saber reappear, Waver's feelings shifted from shock to calmness, and finally to joy. Because if Saber could return, then perhaps Ryder could too. But his excitement was quickly interrupted by Artoria's words. Although I understand that you have many questions to ask me, please calm down first, and find a quiet place. I will slowly answer you. Okay, everyone can go to my office to continue the conversation, there's no one there. Waver glanced around and realized that discussing such topics here was indeed inappropriate, so he nodded and agreed to Artoria's request. Please lead the way, Mr. Waver. Artoria nodded, then extended her hand, signaling Waver to guide them. She added, I do not currently exist in the form of a servant anymore, so you can just call me Artoria. Okay, Saber. No, Miss Artoria, and Grey, please follow me. Roy, do you want to come too? He looked at Roy but found that he had already vanished. Chapter 104, 104 Ally of Justice. Roy was not one to procrastinate. He always preferred completing tasks as quickly as possible and was someone who would act on his thoughts immediately. His actions were swift and decisive. So, after helping Grey find the most suitable teacher for her, Roy didn't stay at the clock tower to catch up with Waver, nor did he follow Kenneth's carefully laid out plans. Kenneth had arranged for him to stay a few more days at the clock tower, attend the upcoming high-level meetings, make appearances at the elite gatherings of Magus, establish his authority and reputation as the magician of the third magic, and then ceremonially receive his rank and title. Similar to the iconic titles held by the Scardred or the Father of Jewel Magecraft. Although Roy, as a magician, didn't need such titles, and his mastery of magecraft wasn't considered the highest, all he had to do was wait a few more days. They would handle everything for him, preparing his application for the title of Grand Magus along with the endorsements of 3 lords and numerous Magus families. Even the Department of Policies, which was often at odds with them, would have no reason to oppose it. Once everything was in place, they could proudly announce Roy's new rank, Grand Magus, the highest rank in the Mages Association, as well as the magician of the third magic. At that time, they could ride this momentum, showcasing the clock tower's strength to the other 2 departments. Not only did the clock tower boast the elusive magician of the second magic, Zalrech, but now they also had a Grand Magus who wielded the third magic. In terms of high-level power, they were now at the top among the 3 departments. The Mages Association should logically allocate more resources to the clock tower. Those aligned with the magician of the third magic would gain immeasurable benefits. They would take the lion's share, leaving the leftovers for others to scrape by. However, Roy no longer wished to remain in that place, playing political games with those old schemers. His pace of action was so swift that Kenneth hadn't even had time to spread the news before Roy left the next afternoon, the day after Zalrech's arrival, flying directly to Japan. And he went alone, without taking King Arthur. Just as he had arrived in London in a hurry, he departed just as quickly, without notifying anyone. At home, he left a message for Artoria, explaining that he might be away for a while and that during this time, she should stay with Grey at the El Mello mansion, where Rains would take good care of them. He also left letters on his desk for both Waver and Kenneth. The first letter was a message of congratulations and praise for Waver becoming an instructor and obtaining classroom credentials. He wished Waver success in continuing his journey on the long road of magecraft, hoping that one day he would reach his goals. If Iskander, the king of conquerors, could see your growth, Roy wrote, He would undoubtedly be proud of you. The second letter was to congratulate Kenneth and Sola. Roy had learned from Rains that the two would soon be getting married. Since he had accepted a request from Zelrech, he wasn't sure if he would be able to make it back in time, so he expressed his regrets and apologies. He also explained that he was leaving Grey and Artoria in London and had arranged for Grey to study at the Clock Tower, hoping that Kenneth would support her, and, of course, warn the other noble students. Waver had already faced discrimination at the Clock Tower for his commoner background, and as his student, Grey would likely face similar disdain. Roy hoped Kenneth could help look after Grey, using his status as a lord to silence those voices when Waver was unable to. This wasn't a matter of treating Waver and Grey differently, but because if any Magus were arrogant or bold enough to overstep their bounds with Grey, they would undoubtedly face the wrath of King Arthur. Roy wasn't sure what kind of power-up King Artoria would receive by setting foot in her homeland of London. But it was easy to imagine that the local faith, the ley lines, and her legendary status would provide a substantial boost to her strength, potentially elevating her to the highest level of heroic spirits. For example, to the level of a fully powered king of heroes. So, for the sake of the Clock Tower's peace, Kenneth needed to pay more attention to Grey, or there would certainly be serious consequences. After writing these farewell letters, Roy organized the dream he had last night and the information he had left about the Millennium Castle and Tsukuheim. He formulated a general plan of action and then set off. On the flight to Japan, Roy sat in a simple business class seat, leaning back and resting his eyes, while reviewing the memories he had of Tsukuheim, extracting useful information, and consolidating it. However, due to the butterfly effect, he wasn't naive enough to think that things would unfold exactly as in his memory. His involvement could lead to subtle changes, pushing events toward a different future. And since this world was not static, there would be more unpredictable factors. This mission involved the executors of the church, the dead apostle ancestors, and even the King of the Moon. Type Moon, so Roy wasn't going to take it lightly. He wasn't like Gilgamesh, who was born a proud king. While he had confidence in his current abilities, he wasn't arrogant. Although he had already made a lot of preparations in advance, he still needed to continue refining them to ensure everything went smoothly. Therefore, before handling this matter, it was necessary for him to find some helpers. Fortunately, he already had a few good candidates in mind. Afternoon, 14:00. Fuuki City. Before dealing with the matter of Tsukuheim, Roy first returned to the familiar city where he had lived for a long time. Fuuki City. After getting off the plane, he headed toward his home. He had already called Old Man Fujimura right after landing, confirming that his house was still there, and letting him know he would be returning soon. Fujimura was delighted by the news and invited Roy over for dinner that evening, saying that both Taiga and everyone in the Fujimura group had missed him. Of course, Roy didn't refuse and immediately agreed to visit that evening. A few months ago, this peaceful city had been struck by a catastrophic event. The rampage of the Holy Grail War had given birth to a false angel, not recorded in any legend or scripture. The colossal being of light, far beyond human comprehension, destroyed the entire city in a single night and converted all life within it. Although the miracle of the Holy Grail had erased the damage caused by the angel, the moment of destruction was still etched in people's minds, and those who had died and come back to life retained hazy memories of the bizarre nightmare. This left clues for others to follow. In the months since, many prominent figures have visited Fuuki City. Even Magus, executors, and dead apostles within the inner circles had flocked to the city, searching for traces of the Holy Grail War. Most of their interest stemmed from Kenneth's cryptic report. It said just enough, but not too much, to spark curiosity and spur various factions to descend upon Fuuki City, hunting for clues. However, no matter how hard they searched, it was all in vain. Those who knew the truth wouldn't reveal the secrets of that night, and the Holy Grail had buried everything, ensuring that this absurd war would forever remain hidden within the city. Be careful. At the city park, a small boy chasing a balloon tripped near the roadside. Just as a motorcycle came rushing toward him, drawing screams from the onlookers, an arm gently pulled the boy back. "Are you okay?" Roy held the boy, reaching up to grab the red balloon that was floating away. Wah! Only then did the boy realize what had happened, and he burst into tears. His parents rushed over, and the boy finally wriggled out of Roy's arms. The mother comforted her child while the father continuously thanked Roy, even inviting him over to their home as a token of gratitude. Roy simply shook his head, declining the invitation and refusing the cash the man offered. He slung his bag over his shoulder and continued walking through the park. To him, it was just a small act of kindness, nothing worth noting. He only offered a bit of advice. As parents, don't be so careless in the future. Of course. Behind him, the two embarrassed parents nodded repeatedly, still expressing their thanks. On his way home, while walking past the park benches, Roy noticed a familiar dark figure. There wasn't much surprise on his face. He simply walked over quietly. So, you're still in this city, are you, Emiya Garetsugu? Ah. Garetsugu, who had been sitting on the bench smoking, trembled slightly when he heard someone call his name. He looked up to see who it was. You've come back as well, Master of Avenger. This place is like my first home. Of course, I'd come back if I had the chance. Roy responded to Garetsugu's question. But what's going on with you? You haven't left Fuiuki City, and you look completely worn out. So, did you finish what you needed to do? Garetsugu shifted his gaze to Roy, nodding slightly. I just returned a week ago. After you snapped me out of it last time, I took Mia to the Innsburn estate and rescued Ilya. Oh? You've already brought her back? Well, congratulations then. Although he already knew the outcome, Roy still smiled and asked, so, are you planning to settle down in Fuiuki City? Yes. Emiya Garetsugu replied. Because of my past foolishness, I made too many mistakes. It wasn't until I lost everything that I realized my regret, and I did too many things that hurt others. I owe too much to this city and its people. I can't make up for it, but I can live here quietly, watching its growth and trying to protect its people as much as I can. Sounds a bit like a superhero. Roy teased. Still part-timing as an ally of justice? Ally of justice. I'm not that noble. I lost the right to be called a hero a long time ago. Garetsugu shook his head. I'm no longer an ally of justice either. Just a sinner trying to make amends. Sorry, I may need to go now. Ilya's school day is almost over, and I need to pick up my daughter. Garetsugu said, standing up. All right, I won't hold you up. Roy nodded, remembering that there was indeed an elementary school nearby. It turned out Garetsugu had been waiting in the park for his daughter to finish school. All right then, see you later. Garetsugu nodded back. As Roy was about to leave, he suddenly stopped and gave Garetsugu a closer look. You seem troubled. Is something bothering you? Me? Is it that obvious? Your worries are written all over your face. But if something's making you this exhausted and anxious, it's probably... Roy glanced at Garetsugu's tired eyes. Related to your daughter? Is something wrong with her? Yes. When Mia and I broke through the Innsburn estate's defenses and rescued Ilya, she had already been turned into Lesser Grail by those people. Garetsugu clenched his fists. Those people really are relentless. Even after everything that happened, they still want to restart the Holy Grail War. Ignorant, arrogant. That's just the nature of Magus. Roy narrowed his eyes. Is there no way to resolve this? No. I've already consulted many Magus in this field, but none of them could do anything about Ilya's condition. Garetsugu lowered his head. They all said it's untreatable. The Innsburn's homunculus technology is too advanced, and their modifications are too intricate. It's unlikely we'll find a Magus capable of saving Ilya. So? Roy tilted his head, looking at Garetsugu. Are you planning to give up? No, of course not. Even if there's no solution, I'll keep searching. Garetsugu responded resolutely. I'll face everything, including my sins. I'm no longer the Magus killer. I'm just a failed father who killed his wife and hurt his child. Garetsugu looked up, his eyes filled with unwavering determination. His gaze carried a glimmer of resolve that reflected his commitment. I see. You've really changed a lot. Roy remarked, watching him intently. After going through all this, some change is inevitable. How about making a deal with me, Garetsugu? Saving your daughter is difficult, but not impossible. At the very least, I know someone who has the ability to help her. Is that true? Upon hearing this, Garetsugu stood up from the bench, excitement evident in his voice. He pressed Roy for more details. Please tell me. I'm willing to pay any price. Whether it's my magic crest, my life, my soul. Whatever it takes to save my daughter, I'm ready to give it. Seeing the emotional Garetsugu move closer, Roy waved his hand. Calm down. Your life holds no value to me. If I wanted it, I would have taken it long ago. But rest assured, I will save your daughter. Roy's words brought Garetsugu back to calm. So, what do I have to give in return? You won't need to give much. In a few days, I want you to temporarily return to your old profession. Fully armed, I need you to accompany me on a dangerous mission. Your power might not be essential, but having you as a partner would certainly make things easier. I accept. You're not even going to ask what kind of danger it entails? No need. For my daughter, I'm willing to give my life without hesitation. Garetsugu replied firmly. And I trust you. Even if I die, I believe you will still save my daughter. That's reassuring to hear. Roy nodded, then tore a page from his notebook and wrote down the contact information for a place called the Gurun Node. When you get back, try calling this agency. Tell them you're referred by their employer, and they'll understand. Explain your daughter's condition and pay the appropriate fee, and she will be cured. As Kiritsugu mentioned, the Innsburn family's homunculus technology was indeed top tier. To save a vessel created from their core technology, the Magus involved would need to surpass even the Innsburn's mastery. Roy had already consulted Jubstatiite during his time at the Innsburn castle and learned that they had no way to revert Ilya back to normal. Sending her back for treatment under his name would only prolong her death. However, the Grand Puppeteer, Tuko Ozaki, was undoubtedly capable. In the entire world, she was probably the only conventional Magus who could save Ilya. If even she couldn't do it, then the only hope left would be divine intervention or the power of a miracle. Like the Holy Grail itself. Thank you. Whatever is required of me next, I will do it. Kiritsugu lowered his head deeply, offering his most sincere gratitude to the young man who had given him hope in his darkest hour. Relax. What we're about to do is dangerous, but it won't cost you your life. When you get back, prepare some equipment and weapons for dealing with the dead apostles. In 3 days, meet me at this location. Roy handed Kiritsugu a slip of paper with the address. This time, you'll be my partner. Let's be true allies of justice and save the world together. Allies of justice. Kiritsugu took a scrap of paper and gave a faint, bitter smile, but he nodded seriously. Ally of justice. That term had cost him so much, and he had lost so much because of it. But this time, he won't make the same mistakes again. Chapter 105, 105 Lost Lamb Evolution Fuiuki Church. Evening. After recruiting Emiya Kiritsugu as his assistant, Roy went to the Fuiuki Church to meet the executor whose fate had changed dramatically because of him. Roy, one of the 7 participants in the Fourth Holy Grail War in Fuiuki City, and also the Master of Avenger, King of the Cavern. Am I right? Yes, you're right. Oh, so it's really you. Although I've seen your name in the records, I didn't expect you to be such a young Magus. Since that's the case, I hope you can tell me everything that happened in the Fourth Holy Grail War. I really want to know what bizarre events occurred in that war. How could it have caused my father, who was originally as cold as a zombie, to become the mess he is now? A little girl with silver hair approached Roy. Her puffed-up but cute demeanor made both Roy and Kotamine Kairai a bit helpless. To win over Roy, she even uses her powerful skill called pouting. That would be a long story. If you have time, it would be better to have your father tell you himself. Roy said with a smile. Stop messing around, Karen. I'm fine, better than I've ever been. I've just found a little bit of what it feels like to be human again. Ah. Dad's starting to talk nonsense again. Kotamine Kairai patted her head calmly, and as Karen cried out in surprise and tried to pull away from her father, resembling a startled little rabbit, she was pulled back by a large hand. See? Again with this. If I hadn't secretly taken your hair to do a paternity test at the hospital, I'd have suspected that some Magus was impersonating my father. Clearly, Karen had not yet adapted to the drastic changes that had taken place in Kotamine Kairai during this time. Stop misbehaving in front of guests, Karen. Kairai picked Karen up by the collar and placed her back in her seat. Then, turning to Roy, he said with a wry smile, sorry about that. This is my daughter, Karen. She's a bit too lively because I've been neglecting to discipline her. She was indeed lively. Roy glanced at Karen, who was still a little girl. She reminded him of Rains, with her mischievous but restrained behavior. Although she liked to play around, she knew her limits. As long as they weren't overly annoying, Roy was tolerant of children. He nodded slightly. No worries. Children are naturally energetic at Karen's age, and being playful is part of their nature. I'm glad you don't mind. Kairai glanced at Karen before nodding slightly. Then he refocused on Roy, asking, so, why did you return to Fuiuki City? Do you need something from us, or are you just visiting? Both. I do have something I'd like your help with, but I also wanted to check in and see how you're doing. Our way of life, huh? Roy took a sip of his cold tea and then sighed. Something like that. I've been visiting all the masters from the Fourth Holy Grail War who are still in Fuiuki City. Apart from Matakariya, who's still traveling, I've stopped by to see Tasaka Tokiomi, Emiya Kiritsugu, and you. Emiya Kiritsugu returned? Hearing this name surprised Kotamine Kairai. How are they doing? Well, from what I can tell, they've all found lives and goals that they are content with. During this return to Fuiuki City, in addition to his encounter with Emiya Kiritsugu, Roy had visited the Tasaka family, the managers of the local ley line. He came as a direct disciple of the Clock Tower's Lord of the Department of Mineralogy. Though Tasaka Tokiomi didn't know Roy personally, he was aware that someone had intruded into the previous Holy Grail War and then left midway. He didn't know much about the final outcome and therefore was unaware of Roy's identity as both a magician and the victor of the war. Since he had stayed in Fuyuki City for a long time, Tasaka also wasn't aware of the changes at the clock tower. But from his perspective, the title of a direct disciple of a clock tower lord was prestigious enough. As the ley line manager of Fuyuki City, Tokiomi deemed it appropriate to greet Roy with the highest level of hospitality. He was also curious about this young man who, just 6 months ago, was an ordinary person who stumbled into the Holy Grail War but had now become the disciple of a lord. He also felt some regret. The fact that such a magical prodigy, someone talented enough to be taken as a lord's personal disciple, had been in Fuyuki City without him noticing made him feel like he had missed out on a great opportunity. But there was no use in lamenting it now. Roy's visit was merely a formal courtesy, as a clock tower magus visiting the local ley line manager. This display of respect pleased Tasaka Tokiomi greatly. He immediately arranged a tea party at his house to have a conversation with Roy. During this visit, Roy also noticed a significant change in Tasaka Tokiomi. While there was still a trace of the obsessive and arrogant attitude ingrained in him as a magus, Tokiomi had begun stepping away from the identity of a magus and was gradually moving toward embracing the nature of an ordinary person. His fundamental character had changed. This was a positive shift, indicating that Matukaraya's severe beating had indeed had a profound effect. Roy also saw Tasaka Rin and her sister, Sakura. After the upheaval caused by Matuskin and the Holy Grail War, Tokiomi no longer insisted on forcing his daughters to follow the path of magecraft. However, Sakura's imaginary numbers body was still a major issue. To deal with it, Tokiomi used magecraft to temporarily seal her unique constitution, hoping that she could live an ordinary life. Through this Holy Grail War, Tokiomi had lost much, but he had also gained understanding. He no longer wanted to send his daughter away to Finland, and he had abandoned the idea of adoption. As long as Sakura could live peacefully by his side, that was the best thing he could ask for. So, he sealed her imaginary numbers body. However, Roy could see that this solution was problematic. With Tokiomi's level of magical expertise, even with special magecraft, he could not completely seal Sakura's imaginary numbers traits. As Sakura grew older, the power of her body would become stronger, and eventually, the seal would no longer be able to contain it. Surely, Tokiomi was aware of this reality. However, even though he knew, Tasaka Tokiomi had no way to resolve the issue. This was the limit of his abilities. Once Tasaka Sakura's innate powerful traits were exposed, they would undoubtedly attract many mysteries, as well as the prying eyes of the magus. This was inevitable. Thus, he did not dare to request the clock tower's lords for assistance, fearing that they would discover Sakura's potential and forcibly take her from him. As a small Tasaka family, he had no power to compete against the true noble houses of magecraft. Upon seeing Sakura, Roy felt a bit moved. This poor girl, whom both he and the Count had rescued, deserved a way out, and he didn't mind showing her a path. Of course, he did not plan to send her to any faction of lords. Instead, he directly contacted Zelrech. Being closely connected to the Tasaka family, that old man was the most suitable person to handle this problem. His way of asking was quite simple. He directly inquired of the old man, "Do you need a magical girl on your side? I have a high-quality candidate here, would you like her?" As expected, the old man, shameless as ever, gave him the response, "Of course I need one. If you have any over there, I'll take as many as you have. But I don't want any that are too old or of low quality." Roy was speechless at this response. Why did it sound like he was some sort of human trafficker conducting shady deals? Rest assured, you'll be satisfied. You can come check her out yourself when the time comes. Alright then, save her for me. My research on the magical girl transformation device has made significant breakthroughs, and now I only lack a suitable user. And so, they decided that once the old man was done with his affairs, he would come to Tasaka Tokiomi to inspect the goods and see if this girl was indeed a good candidate to become a magical girl. By the time, it would be up to Tokiomi's ancestor's teacher to discuss the matter with him. After exchanging some pleasantries, Roy left Tasaka Tokiomi's residence. However, Tokiomi's hand never left the ruby-embedded cane he was holding. Has everyone found their own path? Kotamin Kairai clenched his fists and spoke with a tinge of emotion in his eyes. Indeed, I have experienced something different, but the feeling is still vague. Yet, I can sense that it's real. So, in the time to come, I'd like to explore and validate his feeling. Are you thinking of going on a journey like Mitsukaraya? Perhaps. The church hasn't pursued responsibility for the Fourth Holy Grail War, and I have you to thank for that. You used the power of the Grail to smooth over the disturbances, causing most people to lose their memory of those few days. It was easily suppressed. The final verdict was simply that my father and I were stripped of our roles as executors. So, you intend to raise your daughter to take over your position? Roy glanced at the little girl in his arms. Yes. I brought her here so she can become familiar with the city. Kotamin Kairai lifted Karin, ignoring her struggles, and placed her on his lap, his expression tinged with regret. However, because of the false angel, the Holy Church has grown wary of this city. This Fuiuki Church has now become a symbol. No one knows how many dead apostles, Magus, and executors are hiding in this city. Even though the various factions have signed an agreement to keep mysteries hidden and prevent chaos, this balance remains fragile. I became an executor in hopes of finding emotion through this role, seeking God to fill the emptiness in me. But now, it seems that I lack the piety to receive God's help in finding human emotions. And what about Karin? In the current situation, will you leave her alone in Fuiuki City? I don't know. Kotamin Kairai glanced at Karin, and the gloom on his face seemed to ease a little. Even now, I still find it difficult to feel love for my daughter, but when I try to spend time with her and interact with her like a normal father and daughter, I realize that this relationship is not as dull as I had imagined. I want to love her as much as I can, to gradually reclaim my identity as a human being. But no matter how hard I try, it always feels like something is still missing. So, staying by her side. I don't even know if it's the right thing to do. He sighed and continued, I'll stay in Fuiuki City for another 2 years. Maybe I'll work as my teacher's housekeeper, or perhaps open a ramen shop in this city. I've discovered that mapo tofu goes well with ramen, and I think it could be a good business opportunity. I've been rambling a bit too much. In any case, once Karin can handle things on her own, I'll leave to find my own path. By then, you must come back here to find me, and I'll treat you to the best mapo tofu. That's a great idea. I'm sure by then you'll have found what you've been missing. Roy nodded as he listened to Kotamin Kairai. He could see clearly that this man had already found his path, and it was only a matter of time before he would find redemption. I'll be sure to try your mapo tofu when the time comes. Thank you for your kind words. Oh, right, you mentioned earlier that you came here for a reason. If there's anything I can do to help, just say the word. Yes, I came to ask for your help in preparing a few things. These things can only be obtained from your church. Roy had originally intended to invite both Kotamin Kairai and Amiya Garetsugu to accompany him to Misaki Town. Amiya Garetsugu, an expert assassin well-versed in both modern firearms and networks, combined with his time alter ability, would certainly be of great help to him. And as for Kotamin Kairai, there was no need to say more. As an executor, he was proficient in black keys, sacraments, blessings, and martial arts, and he was an expert in dealing with dead apostles. Having him around would save a lot of trouble in the upcoming challenges. However, seeing that Kairai was busy teaching Karin, Roy decided not to disturb him further. Instead, he thought it would be good enough to request some custom-made weapons from him. Go ahead and tell me what you need. After briefly explaining his requirements, Kotamin Kairai didn't hesitate. He and Karin retrieved many sets of black keys and a large amount of holy water from the church. They even brought out the black cloak symbolizing the executor's authority, along with special Bibles and crucifixes. Is this enough? Looking at the pile of items before him, Roy couldn't help but feel as though Kotamin Kairai had emptied all of Fuiuki City's church supplies for him. He didn't refuse and quickly stored everything. This is more than enough. You've been a great help. It's nothing. The church has plenty of these things. You just need to file a request. Roy then pulled out a slip of paper from his pocket, scribbled down his contact information, and handed it to Kotamin Kairai. Here's my contact info. If you run into any trouble, use this to reach me. Consider this my token of gratitude. A favor? A gift of thanks? That's really not necessary. Though he said this, Kotamin Kairai accepted the paper and carefully folded it, putting it away. I'm glad we had this conversation. But I still have to teach Karin the responsibilities of managing Fuiuki City's church. If you ever get the chance, come see me again. Goodbye. With Kotamin Kairai signaling the end of their conversation, Roy didn't linger. He packed up the specialized weapons for fighting dead apostles and left. As he was leaving, he caught a glimpse of the lively Karin making funny faces at him from behind Kotamin Kairai. Roy smiled slightly at the sight. Indeed, compared to the quiet Grey, this girl was quite mischievous. Karin's personality was not just similar to Rain's. She was exactly like her. But he didn't dislike it. Goodbye, lost lamb. I look forward to our next meeting. I hope that by the time we meet again, you will have found the meaning of your life, and I wish you a peaceful future. Kotamin Kairai. Chapter 106, 106 Urban Legends 5 days later. Mifune City. Outside the huge exhibition hall, Roy frowned slightly. A puppet exhibition. Tuko Ozaki really can't sit still. I just helped her lift the ceiling designation, and now she's brazenly showing herself off so openly. This is way too audacious. Tuko Ozaki. A name that resounded throughout the world of Magecraft. It wasn't just because of her famous surname, Ozaki, nor her family's absurd history, but rather due to the recognition of her immense abilities. She was a master of puppet-making Magecraft, extending its capabilities so far that she earned the title Grand Puppeteer within the magic circles. Her talent was exceptional, standing out even among the best in the entire world of Magecraft. Due to the fading of mysteries, magical constructs like puppets no longer had the same capabilities as those crafted centuries ago. As a result, many excellent puppet masters were unable to surpass their predecessors' work. However, Tuko Ozaki defied this belief. Even in today's diminished environment, she produced magical puppets at a medieval standard, improving and surpassing the theories left by her predecessors. Eventually, she even achieved the miracle of creating another version of herself, completely breaking prior theories and showcasing her breathtaking talent. As a puppet maker, she accomplished something most Magus only dreamed of: immortality. She created countless versions of herself, multiplying her existence, and transferring her consciousness to these new bodies, thereby achieving continuous life and, ultimately, eternal existence. Her expertise in puppet magecraft was unrivaled. Even the Innsburn family's famed homunculus technology couldn't compare to her abilities. She pushed puppet magecraft to its limits and restored and analyzed the foundation of Norse magecraft. The runes, bringing the ancient magecraft from the Age of Gods back into the modern era. Because of her contributions and extraordinary talent, the Clock Tower awarded her the highest rank of Grand. At this point, Tuko Ozaki's life should have been smooth sailing, with her rising through the ranks of the Clock Tower and the entire world of magecraft as a new star. However, her teacher gave her quite the surprise by personally requesting a sealing designation for her. Truly a testament to their deep teacher-student bond. Many old figures in the Clock Tower coveted Tuko Ozaki's magical achievements, so the sealing designation was swiftly approved. Since the designation, Tuko Ozaki has suffered greatly, constantly fleeing from endless pursuers. To find peace, she eventually disappeared into Japan, hiding in a place where Western Magus rarely ventured, completely eluding the Clock Tower. But now, she no longer needed to worry about the Clock Tower's hounds. The day Roy, alongside 3 factions of lords, descended upon the Clock Tower, he took Kenneth and personally approached Bartum Eloy Lorelei, the head of the Department of Policies, to negotiate for the cancellation of Tuko Ozaki's sealing designation. Initially, Bartum Eloy Lorelei was surprised by Roy's request, but under his sincere persuasion, the department deemed it unnecessary to antagonize a growing power over a Magus who had been missing for over a decade. After all, with the protection of the magician of the third magic, no one could touch Tuko Ozaki. Recognizing the changing tides, the Department of Policies agreed to Roy's request and revoked Tuko Ozaki's sealing designation. Because of this, Tuko Ozaki could now confidently hold her puppet exhibition in Japan. Otherwise, the Department of Policies would have sent people after her like rabid dogs, tossing her into a jar of formalin. Still, this was extremely bold. If she weren't so powerful and Roy hadn't backed her, such a reckless move could have easily led to her being charged with exposing magical secrets. He wasn't sure if she had followed his instructions to take good care of Shiki. Roy also didn't know when the events of Kara no Kyokai had started. Nor did he know where Raya Sauron was or what he was planning. So, he was preparing everything carefully to ensure their safety. Pushing open the doors to the exhibition hall, Roy stepped inside. "Welcome, guest, to Tuko Ozaki's puppet exhibition." As the door opened, a strange bell hanging in the lobby emitted a strange sound, and the dim hall suddenly became brightly lit and spacious. Soon after, he heard footsteps approaching from a nearby room. The steps were light, suggesting the person was a girl. A few seconds later, a familiar figure in a kimono stepped into the lobby. Without any expression, she said, "Welcome." "Eh?" Recognizing Roy, Shiki Ryougi was surprised. "It's actually you?" "Yes, it's me." Roy smiled and greeted her. "It's been a while, Shiki. How have you been lately?" "Not bad. These past 6 months have been pretty interesting. I've gotten more familiar with my eyes, and Tuko has taught me quite a bit about that world. Fujino is also a good sparring partner. We've spent a lot of time together training, and we've both made significant progress." Tuko Ozaki commented that when facing ordinary Magus, the two of them could easily kill at first sight with their combined abilities. Even a true Master Magus might lose to them. The mystic eyes of distortion and the mystic eyes of death perception. It was indeed surprising to see these two extraordinary powers appear in such a remote place. "It seems you two get along well." Shiki nodded lightly and said softly, "Yes, but following Tuko to open her shop is boring. Sometimes I even have to act as the receptionist." "That sounds like a fulfilling experience. I can see you've changed a bit. In both strength and mindset. Where are Tuko and Fujino?" "They're not here. Having been inside for a while, Roy was curious about Tuko Ozaki and Fujino Asagami's absence. Shiki sighed, pointing to a room inside and replied, Fujino went out with her father to another city to meet an old friend and hasn't returned yet. Tuko is in the back room. She drank too much last night and is now suffering from a hangover. She'll probably sleep until this afternoon. Again? Sounds like this happens often. Although Roy had asked her to act as Shiki's bodyguard, Tuko still found time to drink. Her irresponsibility was beyond belief. With a head full of complaints, Roy mentally noted this for a future conversation once she woke up. Still, if Fujino was already handling family matters, it meant she had successfully integrated into the Ryougi family, which was good news. And it was clear that Shiki and Fujino had become good friends, seemingly forming a duo. Do you need me to wake her up for you? Tuko sleeps naked, so it might not be wise to enter her room. Shiki's tone was tinged with resignation, indicating that she had grown used to Tuko's terrible lifestyle habits. That troublesome woman. No need. It's not urgent. I'll wait until she wakes up this afternoon. All right. Upon hearing this, Shiki nodded. Then, surprisingly, she invited Roy. Would you like to go for a walk with me? It's kind of boring being here by myself. Aren't you supposed to be helping Tuko with the shop? There hasn't been a single customer for days. I've just been sitting in the back reading books. Even if I close up, nothing will happen. A walk, huh? That sounds good. There's a place in Mifune City that I want to visit. Bringing you along might be helpful. Bringing me along? What is this, some kind of date invitation? What are you thinking? You're the one who suggested taking a walk, right? Maybe in 3 or 4 years, I'll consider dating you. But for now, you're still too young. I'm not that young. I'm already in middle school. Roy glanced at Shiki. Come with me to find someone. You'll understand when we get there. Hearing Roy's mysterious response piqued Shiki's curiosity. Who are we looking for? The mother of Mifune. With that, Shiki hung a closed sign on the exhibition's door without Tuko Ozaki knowing, and the two left the shop together. Within the city of Mifune, many strange and bizarre urban legends circulate. The most famous one recently is the mother of Mifune. The mother of Mifune, hidden in the alleyways, possesses absolute foresight. It's rumored she can see a person's future path. Is this some kind of peculiar urban legend? After hearing Roy's description, Shiki Ryougi tilted her head. She hadn't expected the person Roy was looking for to be an urban legend. For someone like him, a Magus, who could be considered an urban legend himself, was he really interested in something like this? After all, she was completely uninterested in such urban legends. Though occasionally she would hear her female classmates talking about these topics, she never had any interest in joining the conversation. No, it's not just a legend. The mother of Mifune truly exists, and the ability to foresee the future described about her is real. I'm quite interested in her ability of absolute future vision. Is it really true? Accurate future prediction? Does such an ability really exist? Hearing Roy's answer, Shiki Ryougi was a bit surprised. Of course it does. Roy nodded and began explaining, the ability to foresee the future is not unique to just one person. Not considering figures like Solomon, Gilgamesh, and Odin, who possess mythological X-level clairvoyance that I can't explain. Even ordinary people might awaken mystic eyes. It's not impossible for them to have abilities like foresight or prediction, but simple foresight isn't enough to catch my interest. But that old lady's ability to foresee the future transcends these two. It's in true precognition, a genuine clairvoyance, a type of eye that only legendary figures possess. When you put it that way, I can understand. A cheat-like ability that allows you to see the future with just one glance would indeed be convenient for anything you do. That's why I want to meet her. To have her help predict something I plan to do. What is it you're planning? Shiki Ryougi asked. You're looking for a fortune teller because you're about to do something big? Well, to put it simply, it's probably something like saving the world. Roy responded casually. If you don't want to tell me, you don't have to. There's no need for childish talk like saving the world. Seeing that Shiki Ryougi didn't believe him, Roy just smiled without further explanation. Shall we change the topic? If the mother of Mifune is real, does that mean the other urban legends are real too? Shiki Ryougi was a little curious. Other urban legends? Like the slit-mouthed woman on the street, Hangako of the toilet, the swamp man, or the chainsaw man, all those weird things. Nonsense. If there are any, they're just tricks meant to scare people. There's no basis for such strange stories, most of them are just imagination. Hearing Roy's answer, Shiki Ryougi didn't feel disappointed. She had only been mildly curious. After all, she wasn't very interested in urban legends. Oh, so where are we supposed to find this mother of Mifune? Are we really going to search every alley? That would be ridiculous. Should I call someone from my family to ask if they have any information on her? No need. The mother of Mifune, with her true precognition, already knows we're looking for her. If she wants to meet us, we'll definitely find her if we keep searching. But Shiki Ryougi asked in confusion, if, according to you, she doesn't want to meet us, wouldn't it be a waste of time wandering around like this? Smart. If she deliberately wants to avoid us, there's no way we could find her. But she won't. Hearing her question, Roy smiled and shook his head. Because she knows that no matter where she hides, I can still find her. So, there's no point in avoiding us. We just need to keep moving forward. Saying that, Roy tugged at the colorful ribbon on his left arm, decisively seeking outside help. To deal with an ability like true precognition, they would also need to use the power of clairvoyance. What are you doing? Seeing Roy standing still with his eyes closed, Shiki Ryougi was a bit curious. I'm just entering the dream world with my consciousness to ask a friend for help. He can help me find the location of the mother of Mifune. A friend? Communicating through the dream world? Yes, he's trapped in a certain place and can't come out, so we stay in touch this way. After that, Roy openly explained the existence of Merlin to Shiki Ryougi, which surprised her. So even those mythological stories are real? And you actually know Merlin, the great wizard from the Arthurian legend? Of course. We're good friends. Roy nodded. Come with me, Shiki. Following Merlin's instructions, Roy raised his hand and pointed in a direction, saying, she's over this way. Clearly, the mother of Mifune's location had been accurately pinpointed by Merlin's clairvoyance. Meanwhile, deep within the city, a slightly plump, veiled woman sighed. Sigh, that man really is a troublesome one. Ordinary tricks can't fool him. I had hoped to avoid meeting him. But since it's come to this, I guess I have no choice but to meet him. But the fact that he's bringing that girl. Even with true precognition, it was impossible to escape the detection of Merlin's X-level clairvoyance. She had already seen the inevitable future where she would be found, with no way to avoid it. The mother of Mifune decided not to hide anymore. She chose to stay put and wait for Roy to arrive. If it's fate, it can't be avoided. By the way, Shiki, how's Shiki been doing lately? After walking for a while, Roy asked about the condition of Shiki. You really want to see him, don't you? Shiki seemed a bit surprised. I'm just a little worried. Has his urge to kill been as bad as before? You really do know everything, huh? In that case, why don't you talk to him yourself? He hasn't been coming out much lately. Shiki sighed. But I can sense that he's in a lot of pain, trying to suppress something. Suppressing, huh? If that's the case, then it's best to meet with him and confirm things directly. I'll leave that to you, Shiki. Roy patted her head, which annoyed Shiki. Don't treat me like a little kid. I'm already in middle school. Middle schoolers aren't kids anymore. There's a 7 or 8 year gap between us. That's why you're the old man. Caught off guard by Shiki's jab, Roy didn't know how to respond for a moment. Before he could figure out what to say, Shiki's persona had returned to his body. Yo, long time no see, old man. You actually wanted to meet me? After half a year of not seeing each other, Shiki casually greeted Roy. How many times have I told you, don't call me old man. You should be calling me brother. No way, old man is old man. You've always been so uptight and serious. Shiki shook his head rebelliously. Fine, call me whatever you want. So, old man, what do you want from me? Or did you just want to see me? Well, since you're here now, I thought it'd be best to check on your condition. TCH, how thoughtful. Acknowledging Roy's concern, Shiki nodded slightly before responding, don't worry, old man. I'm fine. My hands may itch, but it's still within a tolerable range. I just need to come out less. So, the urge to kill has increased, huh? No wonder Shiki said you've been staying inside more often. But I still believe you can overcome that urge. If one day you feel like you've killed someone or done something wrong, contact me immediately. Don't try to handle it alone, and don't do anything that would hurt Shiki, got it? TCH, acting like you know me so well. Shiki smirked, I'm starting to wonder if you're some kind of Lilicon, investigating me and Shiki so thoroughly. Maybe it's just fate. In any case, you don't need to understand everything about Magus. Yeah, Magus are the best. But don't try to treat me like a child. Staying with Tuko for this long, I've learned a few tricks. Ordinary Magus aren't as skilled as you. Haha, I'm a very powerful Magus. If we're comparing strength, even Tuko can't match me. But in the abandoned alleyway aligned with air conditioners and pipes, Roy paused, patting Shiki on the head. Before we continue chatting, we need to deal with a few friends, don't we? Glancing at the 5 or 6 thugs trailing them from the shadows, Roy joked to Shiki, "Look, some wild thugs have just spawned. Do you think this is an RPG game where enemies respawn in alleyways?" Shiki sneered. "But this situation really does resemble one." Roy raised his hand, pointing at the thugs surrounding them with a smile. "A wild bandit gang has appeared. Shiki, the knight, quickly protect your princess." "Huh? Why am I the knight and you're the princess?" "Because you've got more presence. You obviously look more like a knight. Go handle them." Hey, what's wrong with you two? Didn't you hear what I said? Hurry up and..." "Ah!" One of the thugs started shouting as they argued, only to be suddenly hit by an overwhelming force, sending him flying into a pile of trash. "SHH, didn't anyone teach you that interrupting others while they're talking is just plain rude?" Roy put a finger to his lips, smiling at the remaining thugs. With another surge of magical energy, one of the thugs who got too close was slammed into a wall. "Monster. He's a monster. That guy's a monster." Seeing their comrade knocked out cold by Roy's magical energy, the rest of the thugs quickly lost their nerve, fleeing in all directions. As they ran, Roy calmly raised his hand, releasing a faint ripple of magical energy. In an instant, the fleeing thugs' vision was flooded with blue butterflies, obscuring their view. But running at full speed, they couldn't stop themselves. Bam! Ah! With a series of loud thuds and groans, the thugs ran straight into the walls, some even breaking a few ribs, and passed out from the pain. "Well, Shiki, your knight has successfully defeated the cunning bandits," Roy teased. "Mission complete. What did you just do? Was that magecraft?" "Nothing much, just a small trick to alter their perception. I made them think the wall was the exit." "Are they still alive?" Shiki asked. "Of course. Do I look like a bloodthirsty monster? I wouldn't take a life unless they were truly evil." "Oh. Why are you so sensitive about killing?" "It's not that. It just feels uncomfortable." Shiki shook his head. "If you ask why, I guess it's because of my grandfather's influence." "Your grandfather?" Roy was surprised by Shiki's answer. His memories of Kara no Kyokai were vague, and he could only remember a few key characters. He had no recollection of Shiki's grandfather, who only appeared in flashbacks. "My grandfather used to say, a person can only kill one person in their lifetime. Once you've used up that chance by taking a life, you can no longer expect someone else to kill you, nor can you die as a human being. Shiki. I hope you can meet a peaceful end." Those were my grandfather's parting words. "But I still don't understand what he meant," Shiki said with a troubled expression. "Only one kill in a lifetime. How did the existence of murderers like us come to be? What exactly are Shiki and I? And why did my grandfather look so forlorn when he left? I don't get it. Sounds like your old man was a remarkable person." After hearing Shiki's words, Roy felt like he had some clues, but these were things Shiki needed to figure out on her own for them to hold meaning. All he did was give her a light karate chop on the head, then ruffle her hair, messing up her once neat hairstyle. "What are you doing?" Shiki instinctively shielded her head. "Even though your grandfather's words are deep, they're not something you should be worrying about at your age. You've still got plenty of time to think about it later. If you don't understand by then, it's probably just a lack of experience. With time, you'll find the answers you're looking for." "Time, huh? So, you already know the answer?" Shiki caught on to the hint in Roy's words. "More or less. But that's my answer. You still need to find your own. Alright, let's stop talking about killing. You're too young to be going on and on about it. That's not how you make friends. Besides, it looks like we've arrived." Roy stopped walking. "We've arrived?" Shiki looked ahead at the concrete wall in front of them. There was no sign of the mother of Mifune anywhere, and she was puzzled. "But isn't this a dead end?" "Shiki, let me teach you something. Sometimes even your eyes can deceive you. So, what your eyes see isn't always the truth. The only thing you can truly trust is your heart. So, are you going to come out? Or do I have to drag you out myself?" As he spoke, Roy reached out into the air, and just like pulling back a curtain, a ripple spread through the air as he gently tore away the hidden layer. "Found you, Mother of Mifune." Chapter 107, 107 Mother of Mifune. "Young man, and the beautiful lady, would you like to have your fortunes told?" It's quite accurate. The crystal ball shimmered, and the person they had been searching for finally appeared. After wandering through countless alleyways, Roy finally found the hiding place of Mother of Mifune. As he easily tore down the final curtain, a gentle yet aged female voice echoed through the alley. Following the sound, the once dead end of the alley vanished, revealing a table set up in the shadows, with a figure seated before it, beckoning them over. Wearing a dark, English-style hat adorned with a blue flower, her face and graying hair were hidden by a veil as black as the night. Draped in a neat black coat, with ornate jewelry on her arms, She didn't resemble a typical mysterious fortune teller. Instead, she looked more like a dignified middle-aged noblewoman. Of course, I came here for that very reason. Seeing her appear, Roy smiled slightly. The faint blue glow that had been in his eyes receded, and the magical energy swirling around him calmed as if nothing had happened. Only Mother of Mifune knew that Roy had been ready to cast a large-scale spell to flush her out of hiding. Sigh. It's an honor to read your fortune, great magician. Seeing that this powerful figure was willing to let her be, Mother of Mifune finally let out a sigh of relief. Recognized by the world, with a body from the root, a soul from another world, and an angel imprisoned inside him, this young man carried too much. Too terrifying for her to even imagine. If she could avoid it, Mother of Mifune would never meet him. But he had means far beyond her own true precognition. The great wizard from the Avalon had already locked on to her using clairvoyance. She couldn't see any future where she successfully avoided Roy, so she could only let him find her. And to make matters worse, he had brought along. Mother of Mifune glanced at Shiki, who stood beside Roy and sighed. He had even brought her along. Her somewhat plump body tensed up. Seeing Mother of Mifune looking tense, Shiki became skeptical. Is this the fortune teller who can predict the future with 100% accuracy, like you told me? She's not quite what I imagined. In Shiki's mind, someone with such extraordinary ability should exude mystery and wisdom. But this chubby old woman had none of that air. She felt more like one of those middle-aged women dancing in the square. Remember, don't judge a book by its cover, Shiki. This is indeed Mother of Mifune. Her true precognition is the real deal. As the two powerful figures discussed her, Mother of Mifune could only wait silently, not daring to speak. Both of them. One, the magician of the third magic, and the other, a representation of the root. Could destroy her with a single breath. She couldn't afford to offend either of them. Only when they turned their attention back to her did she muster the courage to speak. Roy politely greeted her. Hello, Mother of Mifune. Ah. Hello, young man. No need for pleasantries. I'm sure, with your true precognition, you already know why I'm here. Roy was very courteous. He respected this legendary figure with an X-rank level of clairvoyance, knowing that he was asking for her help. Yes, I can do a reading for you. Mother of Mifune warned, but, young man, I am not some grand prophet who can predict the future with 100% certainty. I'm just a simple fortune teller. Please don't spread rumors about me. If you do, my stall will be trampled by crowds tomorrow. Understanding her concerns, Roy nodded slightly. Rest assured, my lips are sealed. No one else will disturb you. Let's just consider today's events as if they never happened, shall we? I understand. With Roy's assurance, Mother of Mifune felt a weight lift off her chest and prepared to begin the reading for the two of them. Which of you will go first? I'm not in a rush. Let Shiki go first. She's quite intrigued by your abilities. After saying this, Roy gently nudged Shiki forward. All right then, let this old lady begin. Mother of Mifune lifted her head and began to gaze at Shiki with her pale blue eyes. After a brief observation, she seemed to see something interesting, and her gaze lingered before she burst out laughing. Hey, how amusing. Truly fascinating. I didn't expect such a future to exist. She muttered softly, the convergence of fate and development. The world line has undergone intriguing changes without anyone noticing. Whether it's you. Or her. Huh? Shiki was growing irritated by the fortune teller's cryptic observations, and given how the old lady kept examining her, it was hard to suppress her frustration. She was close to pulling a knife on her and asking directly, enough with the riddles. Want me to predict whether you'll get beaten today? But Roy quickly chopped the idea down with a sharp rebuke. Be polite, Shiki. Fine. I'll let it go. Shiki huffed and turned her head, snorting, is this your so-called fortune teller? What a bore. Then, Shiki's personality suddenly went quiet. When she came to again, it was Shiki, the other personality, who emerged. Sensing the change, Roy asked, Shiki? It's me. Shiki nodded. Shiki was probably feeling tired, so I came out. I see. Roy glanced at her and didn't press the matter. Ah, did that young man already leave? I didn't even get a chance to tell him his fortune. Mother of Mifune, with her true precognition, clearly understood Shiki's situation. She smiled at the newly emerged Shiki, then glanced thoughtfully at Roy. Roy returned her smile. Thank you for your effort. If there's anything you need to tell Shiki, just let me know, and I'll pass it on to her. Shiki was much more polite than Shiki. She showed respect to the remarkable fortune teller. No need for the trouble. Your fate and that young man's are intertwined. It's no exaggeration to say you are the same person. The fortune I tell applies equally to both of you. Come, young lady, give me your hand. With a smile, Mother of Mifune gestured for Shiki to come closer. I'm listening. Shiki extended her hand as requested. As I see it, your future has already changed, but this change is a good one for you. You don't need much guidance from me. Mother of Mifune placed Shiki's hand on the crystal ball and waved her sleeve, letting some fragments of the future reveal themselves from within the crystal. These visions flowed directly into Shiki's mind. She leaned in and whispered in Shiki's ear. Child, your future is destined to be a happy one. Even though you may be separated from those closest to you in the future, it will not be a bad thing. Your bond will never be broken. Don't hesitate to rely on that young man beside you. Your fates are tightly bound. Don't let happiness slip through your fingers. Then, Mother of Mifune whispered something more into Shiki's ear, and whatever she said made Shiki's eyes widen in surprise, her expression shifting intriguingly. This change didn't escape Roy's attention, and it piqued his curiosity as well. However, he tactfully refrained from eavesdropping, deactivating his sensory imagecraft, and quietly watched from the side. After a brief whisper, Shiki glanced at Mother of Mifune in front of her, then turned to look at Roy, and finally turned her head away, uttering only 2 words. Boring. Mother of Mifune was irritated by this, but she merely smiled at Shiki. In truth, according to the rules, a fortune teller should not reveal too much of the future in detail, as doing so could bring the world's punishment. However, since he asked her to speak, it didn't really matter. She hoped these words would be of some help. After speaking to Shiki, she looked at Roy, the only one left. Sigh. She sighed inwardly. This young man. Was he lucky or unlucky? Clearly, the world favored him, yet he was also being watched by numerous powerful entities. Wherever he went, that place would become the center of the world, covered by countless gazes. The dark cloud hanging over him was so overwhelming that just peeking at it had brought her to the verge of collapse. If it weren't for the protection of the world itself, the consequences would be unimaginable. What a troublesome situation. It was useless to say more. She could not reveal Roy's future in detail. Just knowing it was already a tremendous burden, and she could only disclose the fragments that the world allowed. Keeping secrets and speaking in half-truths was the professional ethic of a fortune teller. She no longer had the same friendly demeanor from her conversation with Shiki. Instead, she shook her head, her expression cold, as she addressed Roy, who was walking toward her. I know what you're going to do, and I'll give you a prophecy. But don't ask me about anything more, or anything you're harboring in your heart. I want to live a few more years. I understand, ma'am. Roy nodded and looked straight into Mother of Mifune's blue eyes. Please begin. What you're about to do is very dangerous, but the risk comes with some opportunities. This journey of yours is destined to bring significant rewards. However, do not entangle yourself too deeply with the white. Doing so will lead you to the black. With that, Mother of Mifune waved her hand dismissively. I've already reached my limit by saying this much. I don't have the courage to delve further. Young man, leave now. Don't disturb my peace any longer. At the same time, while I was observing your future, the great wizard Merlin left me with some words to pass on to you. I will now recite them for you. Ahem, to my dear friend Roy, I will be away for a while and won't appear in your dream. It won't be long before I contact you again. Perhaps this time it will be your turn to stand up for me. I'm really looking forward to it. Mother of Mifune, still somewhat playful, mimicked Merlin's tone as she delivered this message. Roy couldn't help but feel a bit exasperated. Is this how you people with clairvoyance have cross-ear phone calls? While Roy still had to use Avalon to connect to the dream world, they could simply make clairvoyant calls. Did he say it directly to you? Hearing this, Shiki was somewhat surprised. In her mind, she could already picture Merlin and Mother of Mifune having a cross-temporal conversation. A seer could predict the future, but someone with clairvoyance could use those predictions to have conversations across time with the seer. In other words, this really was cheating. Yes, that Merlin, the great wizard in the tower, said it to me just like that. Mother of Mifune shook her head helplessly. And he seemed quite pleased with himself. I understand now. Thank you for your explanation. If you'd like a reward for your help, feel free to ask. Consider it a token of my gratitude. By now, Roy had grasped the situation. Though he still had many questions, Mother of Mifune had made it clear that she had said all she could, and he couldn't push her further. The reward is clearly stated, 200 yen per person. I'm just a fortune teller setting up shop by the roadside. How much could I possibly ask for? Hearing this playful response, Roy didn't say anything further. He intended to pay and leave without troubling her anymore. But as he reached into his pocket, his fingers stiffened slightly, and he froze in place. He realized that he had forgotten to bring money. This was awkward. Back in London, Rains or Kenneth would usually handle payments for him, and he had gotten used to living without needing money. He seemed to have developed a bad habit of going out without any. But he couldn't just skip paying these few hundred yen. Could he write her an IOU? She obviously wanted to settle things cleanly, so Roy could only turn to Shiki for help with an embarrassed look. Shiki. Idiot. Shiki rolled her eyes at him and took out the required amount from her wallet, placing it on the fortune-telling table. Here, this is your fee. Good. Now that we're even, don't come looking for me again, young man. After taking the coins from the table, Mother of Mifune nodded. Farewell. Without replying, Roy and Shiki left the alley without looking back. You unlucky fellow, take care of yourself. The rest of the prophecy was left unsaid. The things she had seen were indescribable. If the world hadn't protected her, she would have gone mad at her first glimpse. Once they were far away, a few drops of red appeared on the table, blood trickling from her eyes as she watched Roy's back. She sighed with relief and then looked around. The tension finally left her face. The dark forces observing had withdrawn, and their gazes had shifted away. Good luck, young man. There's nothing more this old woman can do for you. With that, Mother of Mifune let out a soft breath. Her figure dissolved into a wisp of white smoke and vanished into the shadows. Chapter 108, 108 True Magic Boom. On the outskirts of Mifune City, in the mountain forest rented by the Ryougi family. The continuous sound of explosions and flying dust startled the birds and beasts in the forest. This is unbelievable. Looking at several mountain peaks being blasted apart by radiant streaks, Tuko Ozaki's eyes were filled with disbelief. Her understanding of the power of magic deepened further. If magecraft is seen as a miracle incomprehensible to ordinary people, then in the world of magecraft, true magic holds a similar status. An unfathomable, indescribable miracle, akin to a cheat-like ability. Although Tuko Ozaki had already reached the pinnacle of her field with magecraft, her overwhelming power and confidence made her fear of true magic fade. But ever since that deadly fight with her sister, Oko Ozaki, she had lost all such arrogance, realizing how cheat-like the existence of true magic truly was. Even a not fully mastered true magic could allow Oko to unleash the power to defeat her. What level might she reach if she continued to improve over time? She could hardly imagine, with the only standard being the legendary magician of the second magic. Kisser Zelrech Schwenorg. And now, the third magic that Roy possesses is of a scale comparable to Oko's fifth magic. Its uniqueness lies in its independence from this world's mana. Merely using his internal life energy, he could generate and refine endless magical energy, turning himself into an infinite magical power generator. All he needed to do was raise his arm, channel the energy, and find a suitable point of release. The power to freely alter terrain, tear the earth, and level mountains was at his fingertips. This was using the simplest of principles, like how 1 + 1 = 2. It was merely basic magical power refining, controlling, and releasing. Something even novice Magus could do after familiarizing themselves with their magic circuits. But the power displayed in his hands was far beyond what any ordinary Magus could achieve. A self-proclaimed monster who, like Oko, embodies the principles of true magic. Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. If all it took was a wave of the hand to reach this level, then indeed, he could match Oko. But Tuko had a hunch. Although she hadn't seen Oko recently, she felt that Roy was even stronger. Not just in raw strength. The third magic versus the fifth magic was something she couldn't compare. But by adding tactics, strategy, and the resources at his disposal, Roy would surely surpass Oko. And if they took the initiative, they'd have the upper hand. Given the right time, place, and allies, if this guy fought on her side, then the next time she met Oko, Tuko was confident that her sister would suffer a major defeat. Maybe even be taken down completely. Just the thought of her sister being beaten down by her hands made Tuko smile. However, to Shiki standing beside her, that smile looked more like a foolish grin. So dumb. You're drooling. Huh? Prompted by Shiki's remark, Tuko quickly realized her gaffe and wiped away her silly grin. That should do it. Breathing a sigh of relief, Roy ended the demonstration when he felt it was enough. With agile steps, he instantly descended the mountain and returned to Shiki and Tuko's side, moving so fast that his arrival was utterly silent. Well? Is this level of power sufficient? It should be enough to help you deal with your sister, right? More than enough. I'm thrilled. I'm already itching to see the scene where we join forces to take down Oko. At this, Tuko nodded repeatedly, unable to hide the joy on her face. During their last meeting, she hadn't witnessed Roy's power and still had doubts about his ability to match Oko. Now, after seeing it firsthand, all her remaining doubts had vanished. The level of output was in no way inferior to Oko's, and perhaps even stronger. Coupled with her own plans, she now had at least an 80% chance of defeating her sister. And how much of his true strength had Roy actually shown here? 5%? Maybe even less. Tuko felt like she'd hit the jackpot. Not only had she resolved that accursed ceiling designation from the clock tower, but she'd also gained such a powerful ally. As a wielder of the miracle that is the third magic, and with enough influence to easily remove her sealing designation, Roy clearly held considerable sway within the clock tower. Likely even above that of the lords, though not quite at the level of the magician of the second magic. The resources he could leverage were beyond imagination. She absolutely had to stick with him. All in all, Tuko had fully resolved to align herself with Roy. Once they'd dealt with her foolish sister, she'd return to the clock tower alongside this magician of the third magic, where they'd find the old fool who placed her under the sealing designation all those years ago and settle the score. So, boss, when do we go after Oko? Tuko rubbed her hands together, eager for action. No rush. After I finish my current business, I'll go with you to visit her. I'm also curious to see the prowess of the magician of the fifth magic. Perfect? And please, don't hold back because of me. Oko's got thick skin. She won't die easily. So feel free to go all out. I'll help finish her off if necessary. Finish her off? You really are full of sisterly love, aren't you? Roy glanced at Tuko, speechless. She was so shameless about stealing the kill that it left him at a loss for words. Go pack your things, and get a car ready. We're leaving Mifune City tomorrow night. Be sure to bring plenty of combat-related mystic code. You'll be joining me in dealing with the guys lurking in the shadows. Leaving Mifune City? The ones lurking in the shadows? You don't mean. At this, Tuko's usual smiling face showed a rare hint of concern. In the evening, at the location of the Ryougi family's ley line. After speaking with Tuko and the head of the Ryougi family, Roy was preparing to summon a suitable servant to guard this place for himself and Tuko using his own methods. Are you going to use the third magic, along with a ritual to summon a servant? Tuko Ozaki asked Roy, who was drawing a magic circle on the ground with his magical power. Yeah, I've already deciphered the principles of the third magic and the heroic spirit summoning ritual. While it's difficult to directly snatch a heroic spirit from the throne of heroes, summoning a regular servant shouldn't be a problem. As he spoke, Roy completed the final stroke of the heroic spirit summoning ritual and looked at Tuko Ozaki and Shiki, saying, which of you is interested in becoming the master? Master? Shiki said, somewhat confused about what they were discussing. It means summoning ancient or modern heroes to become their master, responsible for supplying them with magical power and controlling them in battle. Tuko Ozaki took a puff of her cigarette and explained to Shiki, I've heard about the Holy Grail War, this magical ritual, but I didn't expect it to be true, and it even involved the third magic. So becoming a master is quite an impressive thing? Not necessarily. As long as one has the qualifications to become a master and enough magical power, along with the corresponding ritual, it can be successful. However, this is indeed a great opportunity. If a servant is stationed at the ley line, we can rest easy. Shiki, do you want to come? Roy asked Shiki. Never mind. Tuko said my magical power isn't much. If I had to supply a servant, it would be quite troublesome. Besides, I'm not very used to fighting alongside others, it's better to leave this opportunity for someone else. Shiki shook her head. I'll pass too. My magecraft is very special, and changing bodies is a common occurrence for me, so I'm not suited to fight alongside a servant. Considering her own uniqueness, Tuko Ozaki also declined the proposal. Alright then. Seeing both of them refuse the opportunity, Roy felt somewhat helpless. But he understood their concerns and didn't insist. After all he needed was a servant to guard this ley line. As long as he controlled its activity range near the ley line, it didn't matter whether there was a master or not. Since no one was willing, he might as well do it himself. His magical power had already reached infinity, so supplying as many servants as he wanted would be no problem. Then, without incantations or relics, Roy activated the summoning ritual solely relying on his magical power. The magic circle used to summon the heroic spirit immediately burst into dazzling white light, which was a sign that a servant was about to be summoned. Bang! A powerful wind pressure that made it hard to open one's eyes surged from the ritual circle. Amid the dizzying brightness, the summoned servant stepped out with big strides. Ah! How unfortunate. I actually manifested as a caster this time? Yet it feels a bit off, there's no aura of the Holy Grail. Is this an illegal summoning? Well, whatever. In any case, I am Ku Chilane. Kid, are you my master? Shiki and Tuko saw a tall young man in a blue robe, carrying a rough wooden wand, stride out from the glowing magic circle. Ku Chilane? Hearing this name, Tuko Ozaki suddenly became uneasy, as he was a renowned hero in Celtic mythology. Did they actually summon such a powerful servant? She suddenly regretted not being more proactive earlier. Rune magecraft were treasures from the Age of Gods, possessing an irreplaceable allure for Magus. Moreover, as a Magus who revived the foundation of Nordic rune magecraft, legendary Age of Gods magecraft like rune held a deadly attraction for her. If she could obtain these rune magecraft from Ku Chilane, then Without noticing Tuko Ozaki's mixed feelings nearby, Roy smiled slightly and extended his hand to the appearing Kuchilane. "Hello, Mr. Kuchilane. I am Roy, the master who summoned you here. I look forward to your guidance." "Oh, not bad, kid." Seeing Roy, Kuchilane's eyes suddenly lit up as he shook his hand. "With this scale of magical power and the number of magic circuits, you are truly a complete monster. I haven't seen a freak like you in my era. If that purple-haired old hag sees you, she'd definitely be thrilled." "Purple-haired old hag? Is it Skaithak?" Roy felt a bit embarrassed. So Kuchilane really respects his teacher. He isn't afraid of being turned into meat skewers by Skaithak? But why is he summoning this dog? He hadn't prepared any relics, he just summoned them casually using this ley line. Logically speaking, he should have summoned a heroic spirit from Japan, yet a great Celtic hero appeared, which puzzled him. Could it be that their compatibility is quite good? "Kid, what do you want me for? This isn't the Holy Grail War, right?" "Yes, this isn't during the usual Holy Grail War, but I summoned you through other means, Mr. Kuchilane." Looking at this dog-like hero, Roy was very satisfied with his strength and temperament. Having him guard Mifune City was definitely not a problem. A great hero from Celtic mythology, son of the sun god, successfully graduated under the Queen of the Land of Shadow, Skaithak, and became her most outstanding disciple. Whether it was spear techniques or rune magecraft, he possessed an extremely high talent and control. Any modern magus willing to stir trouble wouldn't stand a chance against Kuchilane. Moreover, Kuchilane was straightforward and didn't like to beat around the bush. Thus, Roy got straight to the point and said to Kuchilane, "I'd like you to help guard the bounded fields and ley lines here. If any magus or dead apostles cause trouble in this city, just capture or eliminate them. It's that simple. You summoned me just to be a bodyguard for a city?" Hearing there was no fight to be had, Kuchilane bared his teeth, glancing back at the ley line area, but he didn't say anything further and agreed to Roy's conditions. "All right, you are the master, your word is law. I'll help keep an eye on this city. However, don't bother me when there's nothing going on. If there's something you need me to fight for, just summon me directly." Upon hearing this, Roy nodded, "Thank you. I will inform you of the management details and the location of the Ryougi family. If you need help, you can seek them out." Then Roy explained the status of the city's ley line and important notes to him. Kuchilane immediately agreed to fulfill his responsibilities. In simple terms, the Ryougi family were allies, while the other disruptive magus were enemies. If something happened, they could seek help from the Ryougi family. "All right, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." Without any complaints, Kuchilane accepted this simple job and immediately left the leyline residence to look for more interesting things in the city. His swift actions and generous personality made Roy and Tuko Ozaki exchange glances. This Celtic hero truly was straightforward and decisive. Though he did seem a bit dim-witted. Then, is it possible for me to trick some rune magecraft from him? Tuko Ozaki thought to herself. The next evening, a decent SUV was parked on the road not far from the office. Roy sat in the driver's seat, glancing helplessly at Shiki, who had naturally settled into the passenger seat and said, "Are you sure you want to come along?" Shiki. "Yeah, I want to go. Since you and Tuko are going, of course, I want to see too." Shiki replied seriously while adjusting her clothes. "It's very dangerous. This time our opponents are those monsters that only exist in fantasies. If things go wrong, you could die." Roy began to scare her. Although he was aware of Shiki's current abilities and the third personality residing within her, he still felt responsible and was reluctant to take her on such a risky venture. If it were just ordinary dead apostles, they wouldn't pose any threat to him, and he was confident he could protect Shiki's safety. However, the advice given to him by Mother of Mifune also made him worry. Don't get too entangled with the white, otherwise, you'll encounter the black. The white referred to White Princess Arcuaid Brunestute. The black referred to Black Princess Altraj Brunestute. If he really encountered her and a battle broke out, he would have no problems. However, the Black and White Knights would be quite a hassle, not to mention the other dead apostles involved. Tuko could easily escape with her magecraft, and Amiya Giratsugu wouldn't be a burden. But as for Shiki, he didn't know whether Void Shiki personality hidden within her would intervene, so Roy was hesitant to bring her along for the adventure. However, these exaggerated words clearly did not scare this special girl. Is staying at home absolutely safe? Shiki countered, I remember you said before that I might have been targeted by certain magus long ago. Now that you and Tuko are both away, wouldn't it be more dangerous for me to stay here alone? Do you think anyone at my house can protect me? Just that Celtic hero who goes fishing during the day, drinks at night, and is often nowhere to be seen? Also, if I really encounter danger, will you abandon me to escape? Shiki looked at him calmly. Her slightly youthful face paired with such astonished eyes seemed to see right through Roy. After hearing her words, he gave a bitter smile and then replied earnestly, "Of course not." Seeing this, Shiki also smiled. "That's enough. Seriously, you really can't stay idle. You should pay more attention to your safety." Roy sighed helplessly, ultimately not refusing Shiki's request to join him but giving her a few reminders. "Remember to stick close to me or Tuko, don't go out at night, and don't enter dark corners alone. If you see any strange individuals, avoid them. If you encounter danger, run immediately and call for me. Can you do that? Don't let curiosity kill the cat. Don't worry, I'm not an ordinary little girl. I won't do anything reckless." Shiki nodded and made a promise. "That's good. By the way, I have a gift for you." Roy started the car and then took out a sharp dagger from his pocket, handing it to her. "What is this?" Seeing the dagger radiating a cold gleam in her hand, Shiki's eyes brightened. "A short knife made of my thrill, blessed by the church after being soaked in holy water, with excellent forge and craftsmanship. It's a sharp weapon suitable for executors, effective for hunting dead apostles or undead creatures." Executors? Dead apostles? Although Shiki didn't understand the terms Roy used, she could still sense that the short knife was extraordinary. Sharp and clear, it seemed to have a special charm. In short, it was a good knife, much better than the knives at her home. "Thank you, I really like it." "If you like it, that's good. Now we need to set off, ladies." As the rear door opened, Tuko Ozaki finally finished her preparations and got into the car. "Let's go. I've been so busy these past few days. First, I stayed up all night helping you introduce that client to make a suitable puppet. Before I even got a chance to rest, I had to go on a business trip, and now I'm supposed to hunt dead apostles." She raised her hand to light a cigarette, leaning back in her seat and couldn't help but complain a little, "You really don't know how to be considerate of your employees, boss. Be careful not to end up hanging from a streetlight in the future." In response to Tuko's complaints, Roy couldn't help but chuckle. Recently, he had sent Tamiya Garetsugu to find Tuko to create Ilya's body. Just as Tuko had finished, he was taking her to fight against the dead apostles. The frequency of work was indeed a bit too high, and it was no wonder she complained. "Sorry, this time it really is quite rushed, but considering your hard work during this time, I will give you appropriate compensation." "Compensation?" Tuko Ozaki paused for a moment, then looked at Roy seriously and asked, "What kind of compensation?" Roy thought for a moment and then replied, "How about you record the best moments when dealing with your sister? I'll let you be in the best seat. This compensation is quite tempting. If I could really capture that idiot look of Oko after her failure, that would be the best, but when will that be?" Seeing that Tuko Ozaki wasn't very interested, Roy smiled and added, "Oh? Shiki didn't tell you that the place we're going to this time is Misaki Town?" "Misaki Town?" Hearing that name imprinted in her memory, Tuko Ozaki's eyes widened. She quickly countered, "Is it the Misaki Town I'm thinking of? There isn't a second one in Japan, is there?" "Of course not." That answer was already obvious. Getting Roy's indirect confirmation, Tuko Ozaki's lips curled into a smile. "All right, this compensation. It's simply a perfect score. Then it's settled, boss. You must let me see her foolish face." Imagining her sister's miserable appearance after being educated by her, Tuko Ozaki couldn't help but laugh heartily, and all her frustrations vanished. "Let's hurry up and set off. Once we finish the boss's business, we'll go directly to her house to catch her. Even if she's not in Misaki Town, I have plenty of ways to call her back from any corner of the world." Tuko Ozaki rubbed her palms excitedly and began urging Roy to set off. At this moment, even the taste of the cigarette in her mouth felt more enjoyable. Watching her wild antics, Shiki shook her head repeatedly, muttering two words. "Fool. Haha, are you feeling better now? If so, let's set off immediately." Boom. Accompanied by the roar of the engine, the black car drove toward Misaki Town. Chapter 109, 109 A wonderful encounter around 9 a.m. A hotel in Misaki Town. Thanks to the excellent ability of young people to fall asleep immediately, being in the prime age of middle school students, it's not uncommon to have a habit of sleeping in. The next morning, Shiki opened her sleepy eyes, glanced at the warm sunlight streaming into the room through the gaps in the curtains, and slowly sat up in bed. Her head felt heavy. Looking up at the clock hanging on the hotel room wall, she realized she seemed to have overslept. This time was considerably later than her usual wake-up time of around 7 at home. Since she usually had to go to school, her daily routine was typically quite regulated. Today, it was rare for her to sleep in, likely because she had only fallen asleep in the early hours of the morning. Yesterday, it had already been late when she arrived in this city, and then there was the time spent looking for a place to stay, buying daily necessities, and settling in. By the time everything was done, it was already past midnight. At this time, they should have been up for a while. No, except for Tuko. With her style, she would definitely sleep in until well past noon before crawling out of bed. It had always been like this in Mifune City. Usually, they had to send Fujino to her room to wake her up. Ugh. Rubbing her somewhat messy hair, Shiki jumped off the bed, still showing signs of fatigue, with dark circles under her eyes, looking like she hadn't had enough sleep. However, at this point, she had no intention of going back to sleep. This was a rare trip, and she couldn't waste time lying in bed. First, I'll go take a shower. Shiki tidied up the blankets, then took out a clean set of clothes and a roll of new binding cloth from her suitcase, heading toward the bathroom. When she opened the room door, the figure sitting in the living room was indeed Roy. At this moment, he was dressed casually, sitting at the dining table. Sandwiches and hot coffee on the table were still emitting steam, indicating that he must have gotten up early. "You're quite diligent," Shiki couldn't help but say. He was clearly the one who had stayed up the latest. Rather than saying he was diligent, he had actually not slept at all the entire night. After all, the essence of sleep is merely a physiological behavior for restoring the mental state of the human brain. For someone like him who doesn't feel fatigued, such physiological behavior has lost its practical significance. If it were a usual day, he might have actively gone to sleep, but not in Misaki Town. No one knew what dangers lurked in the darkness, and having him keep watch made things a bit safer. Last night, he had also made appropriate magical modifications to the rented hotel room. Seeing Shiki just getting up, Roy greeted her. "Good morning, Shiki. How did you sleep last night?" "Good morning." Shiki yawned and rubbed her eyes. "It was okay, except for being a bit sleep-deprived." "Is that so? Do you want some coffee to wake you up?" "Breakfast is the sandwiches delivered by room service." "No, I'm going to take a shower." After saying that, she walked toward the bathroom. "Oh, then let's eat breakfast after you're done. By the way, take your change of clothes with you, and remember to lock the door. I don't want anything cliché happening like in animes where a guy barges into the bathroom and sees a girl's body." Roy didn't forget to remind her. "Stop being so annoying." Suddenly, Shiki's expression changed. Misaki Town. Today, it was rare for Tuko Ozaki not to sleep in as she navigated through the crowded streets of the city. After more than a decade, this city had undergone so many changes, differing significantly from her memories. Returning to this familiar place stirred something in Tuko Ozaki's heart. The streets were still recognizable, and the iconic buildings of Misaki Town remained standing. However, the shops in the middle of the street had changed hands numerous times, with new skyscrapers, bus stations, and shopping malls sprouting up, along with a multitude of new and interesting things appearing in the city. The small town she remembered had now transformed into a modern metropolis. In this era of rapid economic development, such changes were inevitable. Years can alter so much, making many things unrecognizable. But now, she had no time to dwell on these feelings. This return to her hometown surprised her. She hadn't expected the enemy Roy was looking for to be hidden in her old home, which was why he had asked her to accompany him. Even though she had left the city for over a decade, Tuko Ozaki still had quite a few capable contacts in Misaki Town. Bringing them in to help would certainly save a lot of effort. For this reason, Roy had entrusted her to use her connections in Misaki Town to assist him. Similarly, Tuko Ozaki, needing help, personally took action and diligently completed Roy's requests. So, early in the morning, she visited old friends she hadn't seen in many years, asking them to investigate the comings and goings of people in Misaki Town recently and compile a list of any suspicious individuals. They needed to keep a close eye on the movements of the Holy Church and also not forget to mention the dead apostles, even the 27 dead apostle ancestors, mingling in the city, urging them to be cautious during their investigations. After paying the appropriate rewards, this little task was wrapped up in just a morning, and she was now ready to go back to familiar places to collect some things. Moreover, besides finishing the tasks assigned by her superior, she also heard some exhilarating news. That was the magician of the fifth magic, Oko Ozaki, who had returned to Misaki Town some time ago. This was truly great news. At this time, Oko had actually come back. What a timely arrival. She had originally planned to find a way to trick Oko Ozaki back after finishing her business. Now, that effort was saved, and she could take the opportunity to resolve two matters at once. This thought lifted Tuko's spirits. In order to deal with her personal vendetta, she had invested heavily this time. Compared to the last challenge, the power she prepared this time had taken a qualitative leap. If I count myself in, they probably have 4. No, it should be 5 trump cards. The unfathomable magician of the third magic was her hidden ace, followed by the girl with the legendary mystic eyes of death perception, Shiki, the Magus killer Emiya Giritsugu, and the ancient phantasmal species, the gold wolf, steeped in 2,000 years of mystery. Add to that her own deep understanding of Oko Ozaki. This lineup was definitely foolproof. Even if Oko were to ask that witch for help, it wouldn't make a difference. Their side's combat power was overwhelmingly strong. Her primary task now was to recover her important combat familiar. Gold Wolf, Luke Beowulf. This was a phantasmal species she had found deep in the mountains of Europe many years ago, with 2,000 years of mystery to its name, and it was a genuine ancient monster. Its outstanding mobility and lethality were not even its best traits. The fact that it was immune to modern magecraft made it a natural enemy of Magus. To deal with Oko Ozaki, she had paid quite a price to contract it as her partner. However, unexpectedly, despite having come this far, she still couldn't defeat Oko back then. Oko's power, or rather, the power of the magician of the fifth magic, far exceeded her expectations. Though many unforeseen events had occurred, a loss was still a loss. Even carrying a legendary phantasmal species like Beowulf hadn't allowed her to defeat Oko, resulting in her being shamefully chased away, and later, Beowulf dissolved their contract and stayed here. But upon parting, Beowulf had said, "If you ever need help, you can always come to Misaki Town to find me, Tuko. We are still partners." Even after being hunted by the clock tower and living a tumultuous life all these years, Tuko hadn't thought of going to find Beowulf. The reason was that those idiots were simply not worth her serious consideration. It was better to avoid them. Now, however, she felt it was time to challenge her sister again, and the opportunity to use her strongest combat power had arrived. "Oko, my foolish sister, I hope you enjoy the gift I've prepared for you." With determined steps, Tuko headed toward the old school building she had once used as a base, which was now Beowulf's nest. The gray sky began to drizzle, creating a layer of mist that resembled a gossamer veil. A gust of wind swept through, causing the veil to flutter away as raindrops splashed against the puddles on the street, sending up sprays of water. Oko Ozaki stepped through the splashes, holding a red umbrella and wearing boots, walking along the dim, rain-soaked streets while contemplating what to eat for dinner tonight. It was a rare opportunity to return to her hometown. She couldn't miss the chance to explore. Her cohabitant didn't like going out, so she usually ended up eating dinner alone and sometimes had to bring food back for her. Speaking of which, the development of Misaki Town was quite impressive. The last time she returned, there were not as many high-rise buildings. It was still a backward small county town. This time, various new and interesting shops and facilities seemed to have sprung up like bamboo shoots after rain. While it wasn't as grand as the big cities she had visited during her travels, it was still remarkable. Recalling her early days, they were far from this leisurely. Due to her sister's elopement, she had been summoned back by her grandfather, who dumped all the mess onto her. Moreover, she had to cohabitate with a difficult person and learn magecraft from her, forcibly pulling her to the hidden side of this world. As a member of the Ozaki family, she knew of the existence of that world but had never considered stepping into it. After all, that was her sister's affair. It should have been Tuko Ozaki who inherited it and faced the other side of the world. She just wanted to study hard, get into a good school, and find a chance to explore the big city. But through a series of mishaps, all of it ended up on her shoulders. From inheriting the Ozaki family's legacy to learning magecraft, she didn't know how much she had experienced during that time. Because of her identity as a ley line guardian, she began to face numerous external Magus prying eyes, protecting Misaki Town, and eventually even engaged in a death battle with her sister, Tuko Ozaki. That's how she arrived at the present, having grown to this point, fully safeguarding Misaki Town while continuing to pursue her dream of exploring every corner of the world. This time she returned because she wanted to see what her hometown had developed into. She wanted to casually visit old friends who had helped her so much and see how they were doing. But it seemed like she was as usual. To think they wouldn't even provide her with a meal. How could they expect a guest like her to buy dinner? Ding 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 as the door swung open, a cheerful sound of wind chimes rang in her ears. Oko Ozaki stepped into a ramen shop. "Welcome, miss." Seeing Oko enter, the shop owner at the counter politely greeted her. "What would you like to eat?" "2 large bowls of bone broth ramen, one for dining in and one for takeout, please." "Sorry, miss, but we're currently full inside. If you're okay with sharing a table, I can ask other guests for you." Sharing a table. Upon hearing this response, Oko frowned. But remembering the wet weather outside, if she walked back, who knew what her ramen would turn into? She was an advocate for enjoyment. Food should be savored at its most delicious moment. So, she nodded and politely replied, "Then I'll have to trouble you. All right, I'll go ask the other tables for you. If needed, you can come to our table, beautiful miss." In the interval of the shop owner's inquiry, a gentle male voice came from the opposite side. "Eh? Oko turned to look and saw a young man wearing a black trench coat sitting at a spacious table alongside a middle school girl. Father and daughter? No, given their ages, they should be siblings. But had they found a spot so quickly? She felt quite lucky. I'm really sorry to trouble you. She quickly expressed her gratitude. It's no problem, just a small effort. Roy made space for Oko Ozaki to sit across from him. Only after sitting down did Oko finally get a good look at the young man's appearance. He looked quite young, probably in his early 20s, tall with black hair and slightly gray eyes, dressed in a dark trench coat that gave him a melancholic vibe. The cool colors of his outfit lent him an air of maturity that didn't match his age. The girl next to him appeared to be in middle school, but her outfit, a kimono paired with a red jacket, was an odd combination that gave off an indescribable feeling. She even had a premonition. This combination was meant to be. However, staring at her kind-hearted rescuer who had arranged a spot for her was quite impolite. So, Oko quickly shifted her gaze and turned her attention to the rainy scene outside the city. I wonder if Alice is waiting anxiously? Oh well, who told her not to provide me with food? Just as Oko Ozaki was enjoying the rain scenery, her thoughts wandering, a cup filled with a light yellow liquid and steaming hot was pushed toward her from across the table. Would you like to have some? Miss, meeting is fate. On a rainy day, a cup of hot tea can warm you up. Eh? Oko Ozaki looked at the young man sitting opposite her, somewhat incredulous. This scene. Could it be a pickup line? Chapter 110, 110 Miss Blue looking at the pale yellow liquid pushed in front of her, Oko Ozaki was a bit surprised. In this situation, the other party clearly seemed to want to strike up a conversation with her. Right? If he hadn't been so absorbed in playfully teasing the girl beside him, she would have definitely thought so. Perhaps it was just out of good intentions. The other person didn't pay the slightest attention to her expression and, after handing her the cup, shifted his gaze away. There was no hint of overstepping, and this behavior was completely different from those fools who had tried to flirt with her in the past. After years of traveling, Oko Ozaki had encountered all kinds of people, and the attitude displayed by this young man was not that of an ordinary person who couldn't resist the urge to hit on a pretty girl. He exuded a special aura, giving off a sense of doing things purely based on his own feelings, regardless of whether they were good or bad. He was neither overly enthusiastic nor cold, with every move existing in a state of moderate balance, as if maintaining a strange equilibrium. He was not an ordinary person. Oko Ozaki had this feeling. Her sixth sense was usually very accurate. However, after handing Oko Ozaki a cup of hot tea, Roy didn't pay her any more attention. Although he had promised Oko that he would help her deal with Oko Ozaki, he was also eager to have a bout with the rumored Miss Blue, the magician of the fifth magic, to verify his progress. However, the original plan was to be executed after dealing with the matters regarding Crimson Moon, since Oko Ozaki enjoyed traveling everywhere, making it hard to predict how long it would take to find her. That's why Toko suggested that after resolving the situation, they could stay in Misaki Town, block Oko Ozaki's home, and create some harmless disturbances to lure this guardian of the ley lines back. Roy did not refuse this suggestion, as it was indeed more convenient to wait in one place than to search for an unpredictable magician all over the world. However, the current situation might have changed. Roy had once pondered what kind of venue and in what manner he would meet this magician of the fifth magic,